Let's call to order the San Juan County Planning Commission work session meeting, May the 28th, 2024. Those commissioners in attendance: Melissa Rigg, Ann Austin, Thomas Garcia, Trent Schaefer, Steph Bushnell. I don't know if is anybody else.
We have Lloyd Wilson online.
That says Andrea.
That's close enough.
Hello,
That's
Andrea. And Lloyd Wilson.
Okay, so first.
Hi, guys.
Thanks for being here, Lloyd. First things first, I want to give a little bit of a calendar update. You can see my whole calendar here. Tomorrow night is the community workshop up in Spanish Valley. And then Thursday is a community workshop here over at the Hideout. So please try to get community members there. Further down the line, Planning Commission on the 13th is hopefully when this goes to vote. And so a public hearing will be associated with that meeting. And also on the 18th, County Commission. And that following Tuesday, hopefully, goes to vote. And there will be a public hearing then as well, associated with each of those meetings. With that, we are probably going to need one more work session. Don't kill me. We're probably going to need one more work session. Probably like this Monday, the 10th would be good. Just so that we have time to get all the feedback, get it in. Public comment online ends on the 7th. But this is definitely a big push we're in right now. So hopefully we can find a date. I know Mondays work well for you, so we'll try to figure out a date for our next one at the end here. Thank you. So with that being said, what we've got posted online for people to look at. This was in your email, but just to show you, under departments, planning and zoning, here's all the stuff that we've got. So you can make comments on the Maptionaire system. It's very user-friendly. Thank you, Tess. So people can come in and thumbs up or thumbs down certain areas, and if they like that use or not. And then these comments will be saved. They also, this is a little packet I handed you. This is what people can have available if they want to do a handwritten comment. They can or cannot leave their name. These will also be kept on file for future reference. So this is a packet we're giving to the community, as well as the posters you see up is what we're planning to post up Wednesday and Thursday. So you guys are kind of getting a preview of if we want any last minute changes as per your comments from our last work session. Not every comment we had on the use table got into the final edition of what you see. There were some things I think we were getting tired and a little bit loopy, and so there were some oddballs out on the use table. Like one of them was aviary somewhere that I was like, that doesn't make sense right there. So there were a few oddballs that I kicked out or kicked in, just for consistency of the harmony of that zone. So I made these summaries just so it's easy for us to see what's allowed where, and if we want to take a minute and walk around, or you have the mini edition here. But what I'd like to do for the next 10 minutes here is just finalize those, that they're good to be rolled out. Again, it's not the end all, but this is what we're pitching for the community.
Finalize this.
Okay. So use table and maps. These documents are also online to the public, the zoning news summaries and the zoning maps. Things that we did change, thank you Tess, again, we did take off just the huge swaths of federal land that we don't have much jurisdiction in. / any jurisdiction in, just so that it's a little, the maps show a little bit more of what we do have control over versus what we don't. Because I think the community's a little confused sometimes about that.
I like how you added this.
Yeah, it helped. Well, it was a hope for me to see what the oddballs were.
So you took, oh no, you left apiary and apiary in.
Yes.
Kristen,
Yes, Blake.
so on the Spanish Valley map
Okay.
that you have online, we didn't follow the Cat Creek very well, where we were changing between our multiple use and our highway commercial.
Uh-huh.
So
Are you talking about the big orange swath?
no. So like right there on Tangren Lane
Okay.
and Tangren Drive. So we've got, I'm looking at this and it looks like we've got a bunch of LeGrand in multi-use instead of their industrial. And then we have a lot of highway commercial on the east side of the creek.
Mm-hmm.
And that was some of the stuff that we looked at changing when you were down here.
And were you to industrial because it's Legrand's?
Yeah, on all of LeGrand's was industrial, and then we were going to make everything that was on the east side of Pat Creek was going to be the multi-use instead of the commercial, the highway commercial. So the blue bleeds in across the creek into a lot of property there that is not highway access.
You're thinking between Ken's Lake Cutoff and the rest of Spanish Valley?
No, I'm looking at in the organic area there where it's privately owned.
Were
So
you talking highway commercial?
yeah, so where our line was going to be between highway commercial and multi-use was we were going to try to maintain that creek for the simple fact that there wasn't highway access to
Right.
like Tangren Drive and Tangren Lane and parts of Ranch Road that are still they kind of went back to the not the 19 but the 21 map in that area.
Okay.
Am I looking at
So
this right?
you're saying that a little bit more needs to be purple, not blue.
Yes, exactly. Just to make sure that we're not putting, highway commercial on the east side of the creek, where 99% of that does not have access across. We were going to keep all that commercial between the creek and the highway
Okay.
without splitting lots.
Yeah. Okay.
If I followed that correctly, he's talking about like this kind of area right
Well,
here, right?
no, up into here. It needs to just
Oh,
follow
okay.
the creek line.
I'm with you. Okay. Thanks.
Does this make visual sense? I mean, you guys have already seen it once, but with the cross hatching and we readjusted the colors that they really pop.
Is there a way we can look at it on the computer?
Oh, yeah, sorry. Let me pull it up.
A little more, it'd be a little bigger. Did you already talk to Sitla about their boundaries and what they're zoned, because I'm surprised to see what is that? New zone, recreational support?
Yeah, so that's one that we did as a county. That's not in the SITLA proposition.
Are you sure?
Yeah. So a lot of this area is not very buildable at all. And so we zoned it as recreational support for like trail access,
Has Sitla weighed in on that?
trailhead. No.
Because I'm
The
pretty
only
sure.
thing we have from SITLA is their community master plan here.
Yeah, and that's so they're
So they have it perimeter neighborhood.
I think they have to weigh in. It's their land, but their rezone application has a map, and that swath. Does anybody else remember that? That
One of
swath
the-
along the top is a perimeter development area.
One of the reasons why we did this background and this, we don't have any floodplain studies officially from FEMA, but that neighborhood, perimeter neighborhood development is in the dam break zone.
Of Kins Lake.
So that whole area right there would be, when we did a floodplain study, would be right in the middle of that.
I'm sorry. Maybe I'm not showing clear. Well, so I'm going back to that very northern strip.
You're talking about up here.
Yeah, the very
Right on.
northern strip.
Mhm.
Yeah, that area right there. I'm pretty sure that was something that Sitla came back and said that they was not in the mistakenly was not in their rezone application, and they asked to get it put back in there as they had intended.
North of Peel Drive.
Right. That was. Yeah. So anyway, I'm just saying that.
We can talk to them. I
might
mean,
not be-
this is, and I'm glad you bring this up. This goes for a couple other areas as well. We have no jurisdiction there, but this is what we would like to see.
Uh-huh.
And that also goes for like down there at Height Marina and that too. That's not our jurisdiction, but we would like to see it recreational support.
Okay.
And again, our thought for that is that cliffside is a lot of our access to trails. And kind of this grander walking, biking circulation path getting from downtown Spanish Valley up into the hills.
Well, I like
So
it.
yes, the answer to your question is yes. We still do have to represent the PC application for Sitla and that plan that was approved, 6 months ago, maybe a year ago. So that is kind of in their pieces. It's still kind of active use,
So it's not
active planning use. That's different from this one here.
okay.
If you go to Google and see what's on their view. No, sorry, on your Google meeting. Okay. I can pull it up if you want to look at the SITLA plan. It's on our website. It was approved.
Well, it'd be
under
great
LPC.
if they would be amenable to it being a recreational zone, like the county would like to.
So I believe on there we would make them whole.
Yeah.
They've been really good partners with us throughout this whole entire process. They've seen the changes other than the newest version. Ray and his team met with Sitla as well to kind of go over their thoughts.
Can you
Do you want
introduce?
to introduce Ray?
Oh, sorry.
We'll introduce Ray.
Sorry, we jumped right over it. These are consultants.
So this is Ray, he's
That's me.
he's behind the scenes with
you're not
Tess.
Tess.
And
Hello.
they're the ones that have been helping us. They're the consultants.
Sorry, I
that
went
we
straight into
hired
business.
to
Getting
go
after it.
through and engage in the meetings, and so they've met with Sitla offline, and then we've kind of just incorporated everything into what you see here today. And Tess has been awesome behind the maps. Ray has been instrumental in getting us additional language that you'll be presented with tonight, with the changes that we've made with the ordinance so far. And so everything should be in line with SITLA, and then they'll have a final look before we do the adoption to make sure that they're still made whole.
Plans to be at the meeting tomorrow night, Spanish Valley. So we'll make any corrections that come up as part of that. If they're part of the other adopted plan, obviously, that's already been conceded.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So we'll make adjustments to the map accordingly.
Does that answer your question that you were heading?
Yeah, because my understanding was that that was already zoned.
Yes, and so we're not gonna be rezoning them from what their plan has already been adopted and approved with.
And we did try, even though our titles of our zones don't match up exactly with SITLA, we wanted to show similar zones between us in this map just to help visualize what this is going to look like, especially in the downtown area, future downtown area. So we went ahead and colored those in with similar uses.
I have a couple, I went through this.
Okay.
I have a couple questions. In agricultural, I don't remember, why did we put contractor services and construction yards in there? Do you recall? Or was it already in there and we didn't challenge?
I don't remember specifically, a lot happened that night, but I could reason with this that maybe it's just because a lot of people doing agriculture are also a lot of contractors and would have construction type of yards on their premise. Maybe that's what the way we went.
Okay.
Do we want to kick it off, kick it on? Does anybody have any
It's
other?
it's different from the others. It sort of stood out to me. So I don't have, I could go either way. And then under highway commercial, so we had that couple come in who had their house in the highway commercial zone.
Merriam Court.
Yeah, Merriam Court, and we gave them short-term rental, right? Overnight rental.
They got the overlay.
Their only choice?
So we do not have to
Please.
list that as inconditional?
Under
'Cause
highway
it's-
commercial, we're not going to allow short-term rentals in the future. So they would be under non-conforming use, which means, okay, since you're already doing this
I just
legally,
got it.
we'll let you do it, but we don't want anymore. And the reason for that, going back to what Max said several months ago, we don't want Hilton next to this little house that's an overnight rental, and it's just going to happen there. Technically, they could have Home Depot next door one day. It's not great, but that's what it is.
Okay, but they're allowed. I mean,
They'll
They're
come in under
grandfathered.
non-conforming,
okay.
which means if they ever change the use, that will be dissolved.
Okay. They should know that. So then under industrial, bakery and deli counters, that's the little store you go into and you get a muffin, right? And we have that in industrial? I thought we had bakery manufacturing.
We do, so
but they're
right-
very bad.
Yeah,
muffins.
right above it we have commercial bakery production.
I didn't know we put bakery and deli counters in there.
Well, and I would say, that kind of goes, if you're looking at the size of the institute, like I would say bakery, banks, beauty, bike shops, kind of is all the same size of operation. And so if we want to kick that out, I think we should look at some of the others that are of similar magnitude. And maybe one thing I noticed when I was going through industrial is yes, we want to open things up, but industrial hasn't been very protected because we permitted a bunch of stuff in there. And maybe we do want to slim this list down to protect industrial uses to have a place at the table.
Industrial?
Say again?
So when we went through that use table, that this is kind of where you landed everything. whether
Right.
Permitted or conditional, so if there's something in there that you want us to switch.
Well, that's why I'm going through it now, and
Switch
it's
it, yeah.
and we haven't been doing it for 3 hours.
Totally.
And
I
I'm
know,
looking
fresh
at it
eyes,
with
fresh eyes.
Yeah.
Well, and I do. So what? Let's open that up. How do you feel about axing? You know, bakery, deli counters, banks, beauty salons. What else would be in that same
Bike shops.
bike
Now,
shops?
there are some places that in an industrial zone, you'll see a bakery or.
Yeah.
I've seen soup kitchens or, those kind of eateries
Yeah.
that are in an industrial park area.
I mean, they're in a number of uses, right?
Yeah.
Mhm. So do
I
we
just,
want to
I
leave
just
it?
didn't see like a little coffee shop along with.
But I can also see like downtown Salt Lake, not to compare us with downtown Salt Lake, maybe I shouldn't have even opened it up with that, but there is. You've got these big warehouses where everybody's working, and then you've got this little deli counter that all the
Yeah.
workers are going to for lunch.
That's true.
Okay.
And I think of the, union credit, or the unions, credit unions in the industrial parks are usually right there because that's where all your employees are. So do we want to leave it open? Leave the list long?
Sure.
Yep.
How do we feel about contractors in ag zones and construction yards?
Sure.
I'm
I
okay
think it's a
with that.
fit.
I'm just thinking of a bunch of
Yeah.
country bumpkin friends
Love
that are all contractors too.
Lloyd.
Most of your farmers have almost everything I have anyway.
Right, it's a
I mean,
construction
when it
yard.
comes to equipment and trailers and water trucks, I mean, they more or less have everything that I have. So
Except they don't have money.
yeah, no, we're about the same there too, I think.
Oh, and I have a question about the comment line. Can people see others' comments?
No, and we did that on purpose. We didn't want people to jump on the same bandwagon. And so you can make your own comments, but you can't see other people's comments because we thought that we would get truer feedback that way
Yeah.
rather than, oh, this person
Profiling.
thumbed down it or thumbed up it, so I'm going to jump on that. Those, I think we can make comments public at the end, maybe if we decide to go that route or not.
We probably-
once
I
we
mean, we
close
should.
it.
Yeah, but this way, we don't get that form comment letter.
Yeah.
Probably still will.
We still will. Yeah. I don't know if there's anything that's keeping that from coming.
And
Um,
are you okay with that? I think it was your comments in planning commission to hire a consultant and have all those comments open.
Well, only because, and I wasn't just thinking about any rabble rousers. I was thinking about people in the process. You might not know that there's something we're discussing that might be impactful to you unless you see what your neighbor is thinking
saying.
or somebody, and then that might, it's kind of an educational tool to see what other people are concerned about. Not necessarily advocating for this or that, but trying to actually, productively think through these concepts. But yeah, I was wondering if we already have comments from the previous LUDMO, that was out there.
We do, that have come on just through our website, but we have never really assembled them and put them all on one
Published.
page. So we just come through email type comments, but we're 2 years into it now, some of those comments could be questionable.
Or might not be as relevant to this, what we've got now. Sure. Yeah, I think it's
I think the
Right.
only other thing on the use table is the reference pages that you asked for,
Mhm.
and those are waiting to polish up, just so I don't have to go track them all down again. But those will be on there for a reference page for each of these. Yes.
I feel like I have to ask this question, but what are we doing with the truck stop? What language are we using? What's the definition of what zone is it allowed in? Or
So
Conditionally.
the Love's truck stop. Mac, tell me to give me the if I say something inappropriate.
So it's in highway commercial, right?
so under
They're
what?
allowed.
Automobile. Wait, what's it called?
It'd be under automobile or gas stations, service stations,
Gas
automobile
station, convenience
repair.
stores. Okay, that's the term.
But that
Umbrella.
particular one is going to already be they're already vested at the
Sure.
time.
Yeah, I don't mean
So,
specifically.
yeah,
West. I'm just saying for
future-
the whole county. What zone?
Highway commercial.
Highway commercial, and we're calling them gas stations,
So the language
not
is gonna,
travel centers.
so the
I mean,
language is gonna go away that they have to be down by the Kins Lake Road.
I believe so.
That language isn't in the new
Yeah, that's
ordinance. And so if not, I'll just change the road location.
well. So do you feel like we need, based on the pickle we're in, do you feel like we need to specify travel centers / truck stops versus gas station and fuel stations?
Well, that became the argument with that ombudsman's opinion is that they're different things. So I'm wondering, to protect the county, if we need to have a more clear definition, and what is the standard in zoning now? Are they calling them travel stops, or is gas station just fine?
I feel like maybe travel center truck stop is what we want to do, but the thing that makes it tricky is at what point does a shell turn into a travel station versus a gas station with an associated convenience store?
You have a Maverick today here in Monticello. Has a restaurant component with it. It has the truck stop right outside of it and has the truck fill up station there. Is that a truck stop or is it just a Maverick gas station? So we can work on the
We-
definition. Just
I'm just wondering what other
We
counties
could-
are doing.
Well, we
You know, what
could
the
add
standard is in
another. We could add another definition for travel station truck stop. It's probably going to be permitted in the same places as a gas
this one here in
station.
Monticello. So you've got Maverick here. It is that, and then you have the Texaco, the 7-Eleven. That's
You could
same.
Sorry, Matt. You could just take your definition for gas station and say that it includes travel stops. Because we're not gonna have a different designation. For them, you're not gonna dot where you want these things, so you just need to change your
Gas station definition.
under gas station rather than add a whole new definition that maybe you have to have another zone at some point maybe because people are complaining. So I would just recommend that you just enlarge the definition of the gas station.
Travel center.
Well,
Include-
so then, but if that's the case, then we could only, like in Spanish Valley, you couldn't have a gas station outside of highway commercial?
We have them in several.
I didn't see it in the others.
I
didn't
think
see it
it's in-
multi-use.
So you've got highway commercial is permitted, industrial is
conditional.
permitted, and then conditional in community, multi-use, and recreational support.
Okay, so it's conditional.
Because it would be that smaller scale operation. And I think what you're alluding to is like, can we put in a stipulation like at this point it crosses the line into truck
Or
stop?
when might the county want it to be conditional?
Well, I think in those lower, slower areas like community, commercial, multi-use, and recreational support.
Uh-huh.
No industrial. You already got trucks moving in and out there, so you might as well have a truck stop there.
Same for highway.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, I just felt like maybe I wanted to, or that we should iron that out, given the confusion and the different terminology and the different legal opinions that
Yeah.
we've had. That it's
Kristen,
clear.
What we can do is we can come in with a specific size. That when you do your conditions, because if you're doing a conditional use, you need to have conditions attached with it. One of those conditions would be the size of the gas station.
Mm-hmm.
Because you obviously don't want a travel center in a community commercial zone. So if you were to just slice that down so that they can't do that. when you
Like
do
by
your condition,
how many
you
pumps
meet
or
the
whatever.
condition, you're under X square feet, therefore, you have to approve it if they do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a good way to mitigate it.
That sounds good.
And you're talking like footprint of the whole gas station.
Well, and it might even be the number of pumps that you allow in there, and the overall footprint or acreage of it. Because obviously, if you're trying to create like a downtown environment, you don't want them to cross a quarter of a mile of truck stop.
Okay, I like that. I think,
Kristen, do you want me just to take a stab at getting you that definition?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I think the other hot items, short-term rentals. Again, we're going to discuss this in depth here in just a minute. For it being conditional in conditional in residential. But the short-term rentals is basically conditional across the board. Mainly so that one of their conditions is to register with us and get a business license.
On that note, is there any ordinance with the short-term rental or language in the short-term rental ordinance that I guess we're not going to have that one anymore anyway, but the new one that just got passed. Sorry.
The overlay.
I was thinking we just passed a short-term rental ordinance for Spanish Valley. That's not going to be moot at this point, but I had a neighbor asking about parking or how many vehicles are allowed at these short-term rentals. How will that get addressed?
So that's why they're all conditional. And I don't want to dive into it just quite yet, but on our list is to deep dive short-term rentals today. So the reason why we want them to register with us is they're going to be given 2 certificates from San Juan County. One is an overnight accommodations certificate that they've registered with us. It shows occupancy on there. So if they've got, 3 bedrooms and we've said you can have 6 people in here and they have 30 people in there, then we can ticket them. But on that same certificate, which will be on the inside of the door with their business license, that same certificate will say exactly what they need to have. Fire extinguishers, carbon monoxide detectors, signage out front, like parking spaces. And that way, hopefully the people that are staying there can help us to regulate that. So people walking into this and seeing, hey, they don't have any fire extinguishers in here, can actually call us and be like, hey, this guy doesn't have any fire extinguishers in here. We will be doing a boots on the ground inspection with every single one of them. Can't wait.
And you're also providing that the owner or the person they've assigned to be the administrator or to tend that spot will have their numbers posted.
For emergency.
Given a deadline of responding within, I think, 2 hours, if I recall correctly.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, things like that, parking spaces, it's all life safety kind of
because
stuff.
you could have 3 parking spaces and then you got 6 more vehicles that come and line the streets and take up other people's parking.
Things like quiet hours, and that is all in there. So we'll deep dive that. Hold a sticky note, and we'll deep dive it here in just a sec.
Okay.
Anything else in any other areas? I know Spanish Valley is kind of a big one, but
I had somebody ask a question. I had no idea how to answer it. You know how some of the land within Bluff is being disputed right now? There's
As far as the boundary?
Yeah, as far as the boundary. People want to
Annex.
unannex, yeah.
Sure.
What would happen to them if they were successful? What happens in those situations?
I guess if they unincorporated, then we would look at our zoning map and we would have to zone them, and we would probably do it in similar fashion, which my guess would be multi-use. You know, pretty
There's
much.
a whole state required process that they would have to go through de-annexation. It's not a very pretty process. It's
Yeah.
difficult on purpose.
Yeah.
So they would have to justify all that to you before they do next, because I think you have the option. It ends up kind of
From the county to not accept.
yeah, I think it ends up kind of being a negotiation between the two municipalities.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, we haven't had to deal with that yet. Probably because it's such a pain in the butt process.
It's not very
But if they did go through the whole process and it did happen, it would probably follow suit with being multi-use.
Or sometimes when they de-annex, they're going to want to de-annex in. If you see that there's a prosperity opportunity for you, they'll de-annex in, and they'll de-annex in with the condition of giving them a certain zone when they come in.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So do we feel okay about pitching this the next few days to the community? Okay. Sweet. You ready for a deep dive?
I'm not liking the map to pitch.
You don't like the map?
No, not the Spanish Valley one.
Well, we'll change that Pack Creek corridor.
Okay.
You're noted. Don't worry, Lloyd. You've been noted. And we'll also show, so just to clarify, we'll show the industrial parcels there, and we'll show, we'll follow that creek line a little bit better.
Yeah, we got to make sure that all of LeGrand's property is industrial.
Okay. Okay.
Back when that fight was going on, Lloyd, didn't we leave them ag?
Say that again, Trent.
Didn't we leave them in an agricultural zone? Isn't that
So, okay,
gravel pits are
no,
supposed to be?
so what I don't get is I don't know where it got changed, but a lot of their property that was out of that 1,000-foot was in agricultural. Well, then once we did the 2019 ordinance and map, now it's all in industrial. So we actually changed it from ag to industrial when we did the 2019 map. So I don't know how that got changed, but I mean, it changed to the benefit of LeGrand, anything that they purchased and owned. And we just need to make sure that we keep them in that because of that state law.
We did talk about, when I was up there with you guys, we did talk about the possibility of brownfielding that back into like a park. And I just want to make sure Public Parks is on here.
Oh, you're talking about the pit area?
Yeah, like at some point,
Right,
those
right.
will be
And that,
exhausted.
and you've got it marked like gray. Am I looking at that right on this map?
Yeah,
It's like a dark gray,
correct.
and that's where the pits are. And that is Sitla. So
And I guess
we're not changing anything that the Grand owns. We're changing what Sitla owns.
And I guess public parks is permitted anywhere. And so when that gets exhausted as an industrial use, we could turn it into a nice parkway.
Or
Yeah.
it will be a rezone opportunity.
Yeah,
Once it
gets exhausted.
They have, I'm assuming that they have filed a reclamation plan somewhere
Mm-hmm.
in the county, looking at MAC for the gravel pit in Spanish Valley?
So no, we just caught it on the law change where what Lloyd is referencing in 2019, we tried to change the zone on them, and they come back and say, "Hey, legally, at the state code says you cannot change the zones on anything gravel pit, gravel quarry. You have to keep them the same." And so here, we just got to reflect that the Grand is still that same zone, which is why we still have that highway commercial district type zone that's still residual from back in 2011.
So are you saying, are we okay to zone them as industrial?
Yes.
Well,
Yep.
I don't think,
Because it's anything that allows it to be permissible use.
I think we have to keep it. We'll check on it.
Okay, we'll double check on the code. Okay, let's deep dive. So, that's Wednesday, Thursday. If you guys want to come out and support the cause and help answer questions of why we were thinking what we were thinking and doing what we were doing, we really want to have like at least a unified goal of where we're headed as a county. And so some of the language that we might use tomorrow is opening up more economic opportunities, trying to protect housing availability. I don't know, what else do you guys what else are hot words out there? Huh?
Buzzwords?
Yeah. But just we're trying to promote healthy growth. Basically, we got to get something going.
Who's going to Moab tomorrow?
What time is it?
6
Lloyd?
6 to 8.
Hey, Mac or Trent, it's not Moab.
Who's going to the Spanish Valley Clinic
Yes.
with a bloody nose?
5,
6.
6.
Yeah,
Might
it's
be
6
So-
to 8.
So me and Shay have
Okay.
fire training tomorrow. Shay, is that correct? Just because his picture's on there doesn't mean he's available, right?
He was muted a minute ago.
So I'll try to be there the best I can.
Okay. Yeah, if you can come, please try to come, and you guys can be a secondary presenter, basically, to help bounce ideas off of. We'll at the end of the night, I'll try to grab Planning Commission and just do a quick debrief. What'd you guys hear? So we'll do that, and then one in Monticello is going to be over at the Hideout. Okay, cool. All right, let's jump into
The one in Monticello is also at 6, right?
yes, 6 to 8, which also means 6 to midnight, because people are going to want to chat after. We talked about having we've got to cut it off, otherwise the community will have us here all night. So we're cutting it off at 8. Thank you for your time, and run for your car.
Well, you got to get out of there while you can still find your car because of the dark sky.
That's true. It's true too. Speaking of, here's our zoning ordinance. Okay, little disclaimer on this. We've been really hustling this. Ray has put a ton of time into this for new language. 80%-ish is from the 22 ordinance. So, if you're an old timer, Lloyd and Trent, you've already seen this. You've already played. There's been some things change. There's been a lot of things happen in the last few years that we needed to address. We did not want to send this out to you as a raw file because we didn't want it getting out before our legal team has a real good look at it. So just know that this is coming down the line, and we're going to look at some things today and get comments, but then our next work session will actually be looking at more of a final edition of it. So this is with our legal team now. So So, new chapters that were included. You guys saw the table of contents last time. We did things that have changed. We did add that recreational support zone. We did dissolve the what was it even called?
Rural Recreation and Protection Zone.
Yeah, and it was basically all federal lands. And so we just dissolved that because we don't have any jurisdiction there. The few spots that we did want to include, like Height Marina, we put into this new recreational support zone. So that is a new section if you wanna. We'll go look at that. And then these general use or conditional use general provisions, we wanted it to include a list of what people can expect when they're going for a conditional use, just so it's not a total shot in the dark when, hey, I want to do a glamping resort. They can at least have a more or less standard path. Now we might add more to that depending on the situation, but just for them to kind of get an outline of where they're heading. Things also included, we just passed an addressing standard ordinance last week, so that will be included in this. It also might be a standalone document, I'm not sure yet, but that was just passed by County Commission. And then
That is the surveyors.
Yeah, that's the surveyor's deal. And then we have included water efficient landscaping and dark skies lighting. That's per some state code in our general plan. These are recommendations, not requirements. And so we need to be cautious with how we word those, that people don't think you have to have drip emitters if you want to live here. But we encourage you to have drip emitters if you live here. So let's jump into some of these conditional use provisions, because that's where things are getting nitty gritty. And I almost want to go last to first. So maybe we will, because short-term rentals is going to take us a while. So why don't we do that one last, and we'll jump down here to telecom towers. Where's it quick? Okay, so moving backwards. We've had a lot of applications for telecom towers, mainly because it's a critical infrastructure and our county has holes everywhere. And so this is a new chapter. There is a lot that we cannot regulate because it's critical infrastructure. So we have to allow them. And right now our process is a conditional use permit, which almost all of them are going to go above the 35-foot limit. So they come in, they get a conditional use, and then they would have to get a height variance from our administrative law judge. So that's kind of how it is currently.
So the whereas is wrong because it's talking about primitive campsites.
No, this is telecommunication towers.
I know, but it's talking about commercial primitive campsites. Whereas.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. I'll highlight it. Still drafty.
And is it small is a telecommunication tower small infrastructure?
I don't know.
I mean,
Their
I
kind
think
of classification, especially for the 5G, is they're not, it's not the big
just do the size of
water
the structure.
tanks
Right.
or that kind of heavy infrastructure. It's considered like light infrastructure or small infrastructure for towers.
Well, we have a 460-foot tower that we approved, and that is not small infrastructure.
Right.
So,
Is it,
I mean, the
but the
footprint.
footprint is still small though, yeah. Like the
no,
it's sitting on.
it's still pretty
Is
big.
that,
Yeah. I wouldn't call it small infrastructure personally.
what would you recommend?
I would telecommunication towers.
Okay. We could, I mean,
We'll look at it.
that's a change. But yeah, especially the 5G stuff, the spacing on those is very tight.
Yeah.
New towers, you would probably never approve the 450
Well, we
didn't
might-
approve it in the first place.
We might as Canyon Country.
So how did it get done?
Huh?
Did they just go in and put up a 450?
They haven't yet.
It's in
Sue
the
has sued
works.
us the day after.
So that's one application.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it is hard out here because we are in Canyon Country and telecom towers operate off of line of sight.
Yeah.
And so it makes it wonky.
Yeah, and it's also like, how do you put the infrastructure around to support it? And now that solar's getting better, that's getting easier.
Yeah.
To do that, you don't have to run lines everywhere. But
Yeah, I just question small infrastructure.
Yeah.
That's
Okay. No, maybe we can classify that.
maybe we classify it as telecommunication infrastructure.
Yeah, that makes
Something
sense.
like that.
yeah.
Maybe makes it too narrow. But I'm trying to remember the language I put in there.
Okay.
We'll see if it fits.
Okay, we'll look at it. So there's the Utah code on it that we have to allow for critical infrastructure. Now, the one thing we've been very proactive at doing is that, and I think from at least recently, we don't want it to be a singular provider.
Yeah.
Because we don't want to porcupine things. And so we're saying, okay, one of our conditions is you have to allow multiple providers on this one tower. So that helps minimize how many towers are going up, which I think is a good direction.
Is there anything in here about how you have to be able to show us why you cannot use one of the other towers? I mean, if we're going to say you have to allow multiple providers and then somebody comes in with a new telecommunication tower, do they have to be able to tell us why one of the other ones wouldn't work for them?
It seems like the ones we've seen recently here,
Yeah.
they've actually provided that information of like, hey, here's where the voids
why,
are, and
right.
this is why
That's
we're
right.
putting one in. And so maybe we just leave it up to them to prove in their application instead of outlining it, just proving the need for it is on them as their application
right.
process.
Wait, I'm sorry. Is that a condition that they have to prove it?
No, it's
No.
just an understanding that when they're applying, every application we've got has proven like this does not have any.
So we could
Service.
vote no on something if they can't prove that it's needed, and we would be legally okay to do that. Even
Yeah,
though
like,
it's
hey,
permitted.
you're showing that this place already has coverage, so why would we put up another one? And I think that's going to be a non-issue because a telecom tower is probably not going to go where somebody else already is. It doesn't make business sense for them.
In the application process, typically, if they go through the application with Kristen, you're gonna say, well, there's another tower right here, why can't you use that?
Mhm.
So you'll probably never see it, it'll probably be resolved before it gets here.
Well, I realize telecommunications tower is supposed to be one of the simplest ones we're going to talk about tonight.
That's where we
but I
start
have-
at the bottom.
But I have another question about it.
Go ahead.
Right now, you need a variance because our ordinance says you can't be more than 35 feet.
Mm-hmm.
Are our ordinances going to change in terms of?
It'll still be the same process. So it'll still have to go to the administrative law judge.
So we're not going to allow.
I thought it's coming out of my memory, but I thought I raised that to 50 feet.
I think our new minimum on a lot of things is 50 feet.
So,
Yeah,
Right there, just past it,
yeah, we kicked it up
right there.
so that you don't have to go through this time-consuming process, but we still put a cap on it because a black pole 50 feet high in, say, a neighborhood setting is offensive to some people.
But I think you're thinking of more of our 200 foot.
Oh, yeah, I'm talking.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know,
towers.
we've been getting the 150 to 460.
So that would still go through the same process. And the one about I don't want to say too much about the one that's neither here nor there yet. We still haven't gotten that back. Like, we still don't know what the administrative law judge came up with, so we're getting sued before we even have an answer. But there has to be shown like a precedent of like, this is, he's gonna go through studies and cases and why it needs to be this height, and that's how they justify allowing a height variance.
Okay.
So we still haven't got it back.
Okay.
Still don't know.
Hey, Kristen,
Yes, sir.
can we have the gentleman in the crowd that's talking go to the microphone?
Yes, we will from here on out. Do you want
Thank
him up
you.
there right now? You gotta
Well-
watch out for this one, Ray.
We just can't hear it.
Okay, next time.
Thanks.
There's our location preferences. Trying to be as minimal as possible. I know 460 feet's not very minimal, but it's a doozy.
You missed it,
Did I? It was a fun one, huh?
So these are still in, conditional use. We'll be seeing them as a planning commission and using our judgment of if they're necessary and
And that they
approving
have
them.
to allow for multiple carriers on their pole.
Mhm. So you guys would remain the legal body on this.
Because when you go down to New Mexico, south of Farmington, there are just poles everywhere. I don't know why, how that happens, unless it's,
AT&T puts up one just a
Yeah.
little bit higher than Verizon.
I don't know, but they're everywhere. So,
Well,
yeah, it would
so maybe we do need something that says you have to be able to
Prove the
demonstrate.
necessity.
I mean, because your point is it doesn't make good business sense, and then here we have an example of where they're doing it.
My guess is those are probably oil and gas field related
yes,
where they use the
okay,
older radio,
that makes sense.
technology.
Frequencies.
Okay, that would make sense.
They
I'm,
don't travel.
I'm pretty sure that in the new language for this, that we added a ganging provision that said if there's an available pole, then they have to gang on that pole.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we call it, ganging.
Gang.
That's good.
Ganging
That's a good gang. Gangan style.
Like,
No, that's a
stand
song.
up on this pole.
Yeah. Okay, so that there's not a whole lot to change from what we've already been doing on that one. Okay, energy production. A lot of this is coming down the line, and we don't have a whole lot of regulation on it. So we just put in a quick blurb that energy's usually regulated by federal agencies. We want to promote energy production where we can, especially renewables, but basically refer to state and federal regulations. So that one's pretty short, sweet. We don't have a lot of control over it.
Lobby
Well-
for stricter standards.
Well, so just a sorry, but just a question. So I understand the wind farms are coming back to us. There was some problem with did I hear there was
With
a
this
problem
one?
with this wind farm? So
Uh-oh. Oh boy. Oh boy.
so is there something we need to put in here?
That one is a court case. It's kind of dictated by the judge and how we handle that. From what I know, the premise is similar to the Love's truck stop, where things were processed procedure-wise weren't followed correctly. So we may have to bring that back to Planning Commission. But it's really kind of up to the applicant on there whether or not it comes back for the Planning Commission to reconsider or to consider the wind farm. There is also an interesting one, another wind farm that is more closer to Elk Meadows out in that area that is still, he was approved for a conditional use And we're trying to figure out the language on the conditional use by ordinance. Conditional uses have to be acted on within a year, or you can extend for a year. On this permit, it's kind of a little bit interesting where the planning administrator had indicated on the conditional use permit that it was a never expiring conditional use. And so we're working with the attorneys on that one to figure out what that means. If not, we'll have that wind farm come back in, renew the conditional use. The difficulty with it in this energy production piece of it, anytime you involve the federal government and permits from the federal government, it's not a year process. This guy's been at it for 10 years now and continues to get bumped at the federal level. And you take the, Gunnison sage grouse is in his area, and now he's contending with that through DNR. So there's just a lot of hurdles he has to jump through to make it come to fruition. That year is not enough. And it's similar to what we had heard with the helicopter in LaSalle Junction, and to get the ability to do emergency response and respond to these forest fires and become a certified, responder for these helicopters. It takes them 5 years just to get through the permitting process to get that to come to fruition. And so there are things like that do we keep on having this applicant continue to come back every year, which is what he's been doing, but he just hasn't been doing it through planning commission. He's been doing it through the commission. And finally, I'm like, hey, why do you keep on coming back to the commission? He said, well, I've been told that I've got to continue to update them. I'm like, you're at the wrong body. You need to go to the planning commission to give them the updates, not the commissioners. And so just kind of working through that process. So you'll see more of these.
Okay. But there's nothing we need to learn from that to put it in.
No, it's mainly just making sure. I was looking at it earlier on the zoning maps that we don't change it on the zoning map, that all of a sudden it's not an allowed use in the zone, knowing that this gentleman has been spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to try to get the permits. Then all of a sudden we pull it out from underneath him on a zoning regulation side of it.
What's the name of that company?
Sure. It is. So you'll probably be familiar with it. The partners in there own the land around Terrence, I think I don't know. But it's all of the property owners out there on Elk Meadows at the point before you drop off down inside. It's all of those landowners got together and formed a corporation for these windmills. And they've got one person, a former professor at University of Utah, that is over that. He's Scottish. I don't know if you can remember him. He's got the Scottish.
Got all these,
Hey,
Doesn't that
associate closely with Scottish. Yeah.
I've got all these anemometers on my land out there.
Monitoring everything. It's probably that.
Well, I haven't heard from anybody in such a long time.
Okay. He's still working it. He comes into my office every once in a while just to give an update of where he's at, and I just kind of put a stop on him. I'm like, okay, I'm not going to send you back to the commissioners and have you present there when you're the wrong body. Let me check on this non-expiring conditional use, because that's not legal in any form. And so whether it's the state or the county, to have a non-expiring conditional use permit.
Maybe in the future, if we have things that are going to require federal regulations, like the heliport
Mm-hmm.
or energy production, where it takes so long, that we will make an exception and put a five-year, whatever it is, whatever
Yeah.
they
I
need.
don't know.
I don't know if you can by
Expiration
state law on a conditional use. The conditional uses kind of run
So as long as they can show any progress
activity,
within a
which is
year.
coming back to the planning commission, which is what he should have been doing.
But I thought you said, or they could just apply for a renewal, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that seems reasonable to ask. them
But
to
the
come back
difficulty,
after
and
a
that's
year
what I
and
took him down that road as well. My difficulty with that is, say the planning commission changes and the thought process of planning commission also changes. Yeah, this guy's spending hundreds of thousands fighting the federal level and the federal systems, and then all of a sudden you change your mind and I make him reapply and he doesn't get that. Well, who's now going to reimburse him for all of this legwork that he's gone through all of these years, with the understanding that the county's going to hold true to what they initially approved him at, which is a non-expiring conditional use? And so Kristen's been, and this is why you see in your minutes nowadays is we go back to the minutes at the point in time where, and the attorneys are asking, hey, can you send us this conditional use? And we're like, we've got nothing. You know, it doesn't state
Just says
what the
approved.
conditional uses are or how long. It's just he was approved for a conditional use. It's fun.
Well, not where they have to come back and completely reapply for the conditional use.
Or just report, give you an update.
But they want an extension, you know, they want that added
Mhm.
year, which
Well,
is
they're
already in
still
our.
they're vested as long as they can show some progress within the year. Then they don't have to. They don't need to reapply. It's just
There's
they're
an
vested.
Some movement,
They're vested.
some movement on it.
But if they haven't made any progress, but they're still working on it, they can come back after a year and say, we haven't made progress on the ground, but we would like to renew for another year.
Hmm.
Not reapply, because they're already,
They're
'cause
already
they have
in
the right
that.
to just extend it, right? Another
That's what I
year.
understood.
I thought there was a limit to the number of times you can.
So that's it. You
Twice.
guys are thinking of a temporary conditional use, like the RV.
So even our
living in
conditional
an
use
RV.
has it. You can come back
Not that
in
one.
2 times. So basically twice, 3, is it changing?
Yeah,
So 3 years.
3 6-month extensions.
Okay.
But that's for temporary, right?
For your
Yeah.
conditional use. So the way it reads right now, conditional use, I've got the first year. Then I can come in to extend that and renew that for another year. But
Without
outside of that,
a vote or anything,
correct.
right?
Yep. Which I think you want, especially with his. I mean, his is a pretty large development where he's continued to go down this road. He can show, the meetings that he's held at a federal level with the EPA and everybody else. And so he's done his documentation pretty well as the county documentation of, who he spoke to and when he received those approvals.
So the next lady that comes in and she's got a solar farm planned, she can basically have her year that she's done a conditional use
Mhm.
permit and then a 1-year extension. She has 2 years basically on that one.
To get it in.
And then if she doesn't have her solar farm built by then we have to go to a new application.
You would have to look at a new one the way it's written right now.
Okay. Thank you.
And then that's applying and paying the fees and everything else
Right.
associated with that.
So what are we proposing to change?
I mean, is even 2 years long enough?
2 years. So if you take the windmills, take the federal process out of it. If you give somebody the opportunity to build a home in this zone as a conditional use and they're not in the ground within 2 years, you don't want to continue to extend them.
Right.
Apparently there's something going on to where they're not moving forward, a Home Depot or something like that. It's like we need the development to take place and not continue
Right.
this long.
Yeah.
I mean, you see that kind of now with some of the zoning that's taken place is like, hey, give us this overnight rental overlay district approval. And then it just kind of slows down and goes away. It's like, well, in our heads, we're tracking all of these overnight rentals that's been approved or these commercial developments that's supposed to come to fruition. They get the entitlement and they're either trying to sell it to developer or not developing. By limiting the conditional use time period, then you get them to move on it faster.
Or sell it to somebody else
Or
who
sell
wants
it.
to do something else with it.
Right.
Correct. But you want the development to take place and not just be extended out minus these federal processes.
Well, so is it with our new map? Would this wind farm just be permitted?
So all energy production's conditional.
Okay.
So right now it's allowed conditional in ag, multi-use, and industrial.
And if this depends on the commission, The tricky thing about energy is you don't just build a solar farm. You've got to have transmission lines that go with it.
Yeah.
And so they get complicated really quickly because you've got to cross people's property. You've got federal permits you're going to have to get in place. Yep. And then you got to work with whatever the power company is that's putting it into the bigger grid. And sometimes they're incredibly slow.
Intentionally slow.
They're as bureaucratic as everyone else. So
And that's where this developer is. I mean, he's got a hook to the grid because he's doing both. Well, he wants to do 3 processes. So he has the windmills, he wants the solar farm underneath him, and then he also wants a hydrogen production off of the systems as well because he has everything there for hydrogen. And so there's 3 energy sources that he's trying to tap into, yet he's got to be able to connect to the federal grid, go through these power companies to get the transmission. Plus he's fighting the Gunnison sage grouse issue and whether or not those turbines will affect their productivity, which some would say it's a good thing if it does.
They're
But
not even out there.
they said there's 3. There's 3 of them now. And I'm like, whatever. Yeah, yeah. The Gunnison one, yeah. Gunnison is protected out of Gunnison, Colorado. That's primarily where they live. But they used to be here and they went away, and now they're saying that there's 3 that are out there that need to be protected. If you want to go watch them dance early in the morning, they'll take you on a tour.
Well, what if somebody comes in where the wind turbines plan is and wants to do something else? How long are you gonna wait?
How long do you hold that open for?
Yeah, I mean,
Because that area's kind of been developing into residential housing, yet these property owners that are out there that have kind of jumped on with him as investors, they're waiting for him to come to fruition with it. And you can have, I mean, you see the wind farms out here that are, you're slowly seeing some of the housing development around there, ranches type thing pop up. So in Scotland, according to this guy, they're everywhere and can exist. And he's already figured out the sage grouse issue. And
his wind
yeah, he can help promote their growth. We're like, ah, never
Sage
mind.
grouse habitat
Yeah.
underneath.
Yes. Yep.
Electricity hookups for every sage grouse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's all. Charging station.
All right, I could use a potty break. Do you want to take a 5-10 here, grab some snacks? I wasn't going to fully feed you tonight, so snack it up. And then I'll send you home hungry. Sorry. Unless you guys are starving, then I am happy to.
I'm good.
How long do you think we'll be here?
Only until 6 or earlier. We'll get you out. Okay, let's take 5-10. Grab a little snack. Run to the bathroom. We'll be back.
Where are you guys staying? Are you guys staying across the Lady Canyon?
We are.
There's just a big debate whether or not they're really here. And so
I've actually
Are they
entered
actually
into
in
another
Medicine
contract with
Colorado?
Yes,
solar
and
farm.
that's where they
Or,
originated.
yeah.
Okay.
Just because
They
the one
migrated
is doing
here.
the studies
Oh,
out
yeah,
there.
they're
They're on the
not.
state line.
I've still got poles,
Those are our,
Out of East.
300-foot
we
poles.
started running into this
Yeah.
around that northwest
Yeah.
quadrant by Salt Lake
Your
City
son.
where grouse habitat was starting to show up.
But yeah, I'm in a 5-year contract.
Oh,
This is,
yeah.
This is where I'm gonna make my million stream.
And that was threatened.
Combining
Okay.
these two.
That's
See,
the
they have different
danger.
levels,
And so,
Well,
but they put the prison there anyway.
yeah.
I mean, according to this 2020 map,
Really?
you missed our
Stark means
argument. She's
occupied
going,
habitat.
don't put me in that discussion."
There you go. It's
That's awesome.
No, this is pretty Medicine sage grouse.
I wonder why my stairs are dead in my water bottle. What'd you get? Some good eats?
Seen their answers are like, we
A
did
little bit of
this.
everything.
Yeah. Awesome.
Coyotes and,
Interesting food combinations.
here we have a lot of the.
Lloyd just texted me, says, you want a beer?
baby braves.
Oh, yeah.
So they don't produce a lot here.
You?
That makes sense.
No, thank you.
And
Yes.
I don't think that would speed up the
especially
meeting.
have
Maybe
natural
coffee.
ones and collisions.
I don't know. Now they make
Yeah, the wind turbine.
alcohol with caffeine, so
They're still figuring
we
out.
can get
Oh, that's
we can
right.
get both.
to have
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
drink one to put you to sleep and the other to keep you awake.
You can't decide
See, he says
which
he's
one
got
you wanna-
that figured out with his Scottish plant that he did.
Do you think there'll be a good turnout at the Monticello? Really? When we talk about unincorporated areas around
He's been able to plant.
at least Monticello, we're talking about Elk Meadows,
so that they'll
Eastland,
breed and habitat in the hedgerows and not.
but nothing to the
And so,
west.
which, okay, that makes sense.
But it's the closest place for like Mexican hat.
He's a university, he's
Bluff,
a university.
you know,
of-
Plant.
But bluff, yeah.
The Scottish.
I just don't
Got
see
an
it.
idea.
I mean, I think we'll
I
have
have his
people
name written
at
down.
Spanish
They have
Valley.
like.
Yeah.
But I
I
just
wonder if he's
see a
into
whole bunch of you
wind
coming up
turbines
to.
I'll come up
Browser
Monticello,
or
but not
Energy
Spanish
production.
Valley.
biology or.
Well, I don't know if Lloyd has talked to any of the neighbors, but I did hang up some flyers on some mailboxes, the ones that she sent us, so we could try to get more people
Cedar City is
than
all about
just the
prairie
usual
Yeah, yeah, they took them off of the endangered
coalition
list.
Oh,
folks.
what
I mean,
about,
Did
it's just
the
nice to
desert
have
tortoise?
Down
other
in
folks
That's
Washington.
participate than
Sure.
the ones.
Yeah,
Did you send it to the coalition people?
yeah, it was a
Yes.
snail.
Yeah, I let
No
them know.
way.
Yeah,
Really?
But,
they have
you know,
this
there's a lot of
amber snail.
Neighbors who don't really pay attention or
Yeah, it's
participate, and
kind
they're
of
going to come back in a
become-
couple weeks
become
and
the
say,
flavor of the
"We
month.
never heard of this."
Yeah.
But how you stop development
Yeah.
is to find.
But we don't really have a
something
good
that's
way
Or threatened.
to advertise in Spanish Valley.
How often does it?
If we had a truck stop, we could put flyers up.
How was your drive down?
If you had a post office,
smooth.
that's where we did our
It's
news.
so pretty down here.
It
Well,
is
Gossip
after
and
you
news.
get to like Moab,
Post
Yeah.
office.
but before
Yeah.
Moab, between
Yeah.
the price
That's-
and
that's
Moab, you're
all.
like, oh, this is just.
We were talking
Yeah,
about
we were
that.
talking all about the run on the book cliffs. It's just kind of like,
It just goes on. That's when I
Oh,
started knitting. I brought,
Oh,
I
between
brought,
Wellington,
Yeah,
exactly.
Green River,
Yeah.
exactly.
terrible country.
That's on
Yeah.
forever.
But then after you get to Moab, then it's
it gets good.
It gets
Even,
better and
even,
better.
like, you have to get to the Moab airport
yeah,
before it starts
yeah.
changing.
Yeah.
yeah.
But it's a pretty fast drive. I wouldn't want to, I've been through Moab when it's like having events.
Yeah,
It's a
but
nightmare.
it is. A
Does
nightmare.
Monticello city
Needed a
have
bypass.
more
That's what
than
they keep saying.
assuming
Yeah.
there's
No one knows
highway
where to
commercial
put
on
it.
either side?
They
And does it
haven't mapped
change
out,
just to residential after
you
that? Or
guys-
So-
But now that development.
So one plot off of Main and Center is
They don't have any
commercial.
rights to do half the stuff.
Then it goes to
They
R2,
just come up with a study.
which is multifamily
Yeah.
dwelling.
Uh-huh.
That's exactly what it is.
If you
But
wanna
you don't
do
have
it,
anything
it's
like a
the same one
multiple
like
use or
you-
community commercial or anything like
Could
that.
be
Yeah.
an oil truck.
We got 3
Let's do a
zones.
bypass, but it takes them like
Well,
3 miles
4.
out of the way.
Yeah.
Ag.
The road
Ag.
goes straight through.
That's how it is.
So that-
Actually, there's industrial
Doing
too.
okay?
Mhm.
What's in what?
If the roads just
What's
get
an
so
I can't
industrial?
believe we're gonna be out of here.
Get
So,
away.
oh yeah.
Storage units, and that's
So I'm not gonna go to
Yeah,
Spanish Valley, but I'll come up from
it.
Monticello.
But
Okay.
they
I'll be a couple
rezone and
minutes
put
Same
late.
way, it's the same way with railroad.
new
Yeah,
storage
you're
units down here. They
Have rail down
they-
there.
All the time is
Yeah.
Because the
uh,
nation-
leapfrog
It's
over
okay.
residential
already implemented.
rezoned
They
it
have-
Railroad system?
Yeah,
to
when they have the
commercial and
coal
put storage
Yeah.
units in
for the
commercial.
generating
Okay, so
station.
it's part of a mining thing.
But
But
to
So are we
and
actually
then
going to
from-
get
The rail goes to
a
Moab.
clean
block.
copy of this
Uh-huh.
before?
and then change it
So
back.
that's what I think if
'Cause
we
it's
do it the
all
10th,
commercial.
Mhm.
I mean,
then
all
certainly
residential.
Residential.
So is there any value
But
in
it's-
reading
is it
what's
free
in
or cost?
2022?
Like you see that more and more.
because that's 80% of this.
I don't know, maybe not storage units
Basically,
in
so
residential
like
areas
it's
and
really
stuff.
changed just these chapters.
But
we're
you
going
know you
over.
drive through Monticello and Blanding and you see
So things should be in there,
homes,
you
you know,
guys
right
need
on
to
Main
peek.
Street like they used
We
to
just
be,
didn't
and then
wanna
If there used to-
commercial,
was this
commercial,
ever
like
real
all these
estate?
houses eventually are gonna
yet.
be turned into retail or you know
There's a line
commercial
already.
space.
Because can't be held against
Torn down.
you.
Right.
Built into something else.
Yeah, and that, you know,
Well,
That's
is dedicated, drops
like
them
what
off.
we have with Sunny
Well,
Lester.
Hopefully by the end of this week. Easy.
Same thing with all these
I know.
houses here on Main Street. That's where the old pioneers go.
Right, and that makes sense.
Can I
You want
rent
it,
an
convenient
Uber?
access.
Can I
You
call
walk out your door, you're right on Main Street.
My
you can
only
go to the,
concern
walk to the
about
grocery
that
store.
is if
No, but there are tons of
the
buildings
list
But
isn't
then
posted,
In here.
people can
when
complain if the
7-Eleven
comments period
paved
is
that whole parking
June
lot, now you
7th
got all
and
those
this isn't out.
residences right across the street
Well,
that are in the
this is
commercial
still,
district.
you'll have
Oh,
to
really?
post it for competitive.
Complaining
So even
about
though the comments close on the 7th.
I literally thought that
Well,
was.
the truck
Yeah.
still parked there even when it was
But
gravel,
still.
isn't it?
Yeah,
Ideally,
Then they
yes.
complained
So we'd
about
like
the
to have that.
dust.
Being
Yes.
unfaithful.
but now,
Want to sell
now that
because we're
there's a whole
eating
lot
more.
more trucks in there, now
I
they're
mean, the other-
complaining about the noise.
Not
The
at
other
all,
day-
because once you get here, there's hardly
But
any.
again,
There's so much in here.
they're in a commercial
Yeah,
district.
my wife and kids were
Well,
gone
when
yesterday.
that
so I'm
happens to
just
you, all you
waiting.
can do is complain.
We
Look,
want the
and there
community to
was
see that we do
nothing, so
not
I
need
just
to
went to the
go
grocery
there
store.
with fine-tooth comb.
Picked up food there.
Because like we can't, we
Yeah,
can't
no,
do
no,
anything
no.
about that.
Commercial district to complain about.
So that's kind of the
it.
other half of it.
You're gonna
Yeah,
have
there
one.
was that.
Well, they can go through it with a fine tooth
No, I
comb,
mean,
it
I
just
was
might be a
joking,
waste
like,
of their time.
Right.
Did you like the map?
Yeah.
There's so much
I like
stuff
that.
we can
Did you get to
do
look at it?
anything
We don't
about.
need
Yeah,
to
it's
go
got it.
Charlie.
Maybe in that like
I have to-
industrial.
I have to say,
It's okay.
Did you have some?
All right, shall we jump back into it?
No,
Absolutely.
really
I
need to take
appreciated
some other
typing,
people, get some other
They would,
people.
they want to be.
I've been typing the YouTube minutes and everybody's eating their chips.
And so at that point in time, then it makes sense.
Oh no! What is? How do you
Oh.
spell that? How do you spell that?
Yeah, and that was
Trent
noisy.
continued to munch chips.
I tried to hold them in my
36
mouth.
Seconds. All right, primitive camping. This wasn't a thing even 6 months ago. Now it's very much a thing. We have a lot of these heading our way. You'll notice here in our general provisions, one of the biggest issues or concerns we have with the primitive camping is sanitation and welfare. And so a lot of our considerations around primitive camping are that they have access to some sort of sanitation.
An emergency fire.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, things like water storage and that for putting out fires. So you can see their general provisions there. Here's the better side of it. And you're gonna see this even as soon as next month. I think I've got 2. Sitting waiting for this to come through. People don't want to put in very much infrastructure. They just kind of want to cut a hole in the fence and charge you money. And we're meeting them in the middle with, hey, you need a little bit of infrastructure to let people know that you're here. Then ambulance can get there and not get stuck in the sand dune acres. And so there you go. And you can see these are permitted. They're under camp parks and resorts on our use table. All camp parks and resorts are conditional, so they're allowed in ag, multi-use, and the recreational support. The reason why they're conditional across the board like that is so that we can try to help regulate some of these sanitation issues and welfare.
Would it be worthwhile to put in that they must be easily accessible by emergency vehicles?
I can type.
We can.
Meh. It's getting real fuzzy upstairs. Yeah, we'll put in a little clause there.
Say something.
Yes.
If you add easily accessible, you're going to need to define
Easily and
Mm.
accessible.
Anytime you have those kind of relative terms, you're going to have to create And also accessibility can be confused with ADA requirement. So it'll be up to you to create that standard, probably by policy, that you'll work with Kristen to have a policy. This is how we're defining easily. And it would be something you would agree to as a, Kristen, tell them if I'm talking too much, but it'd be something that you would agree to as a planning commission. This is our policy as it relates to this, so it's defendable if someone wants to complain.
Well, I look at things like Crooked Bindi Ranch that we approved a while back.
Mhm.
He is way out there. That is not easily accessible, period. And so when there is an emergency and somebody's having a heart attack, you need to know you're going to die out there. I mean, he's hours out. And I think one thing Mac and I have talked about a lot is when we are doing these campsites and recreational areas, of course people want to be out, but we realize that there are some places that are too far out.
That's the one on King Creek,
Mm-hmm.
and then back up.
And then back up and down the dirt road
Yeah.
and so I know even the development in Fry Canyon talked about a while ago. This is off the books, only on record. I remember that developer was talking about, well, could we have EMS services like in-house out there? You know, because you're just too far out. So I don't know if somebody does want to develop way out there, do we make that a condition as per that
It's a whole other
individual
liability
application?
Well, yeah,
that
what's
person.
our
Right?
what's our liability if we have an ordinance that allows these primitive campsites? You know, as
You have a liability.
4 hours out.
And that's why your zoning is there to protect that. It may not be just the health of the neighbors, maybe health of the individuals and so that are going there. And if you remember on the one that we placed next to the Colorado River, which was more of a glamping, I had them in a conditional use, making sure that they're handing out information. You know, if you're gonna go hiking, here's what to expect, you know, the rattlesnakes and heat stroke and things like that, so they can educate those individuals just from the planning sense that you're so off the beaten path that through that conditional use, we help regulate it. Now, the difficulty with that is a year or 2 years from now in their operation, well, who's checking to make sure that they're following up with that, those conditions? It's up to the planning administrator to make sure that those conditions uses,
I
Don't you
knew
be
that
pointing
was
that
coming.
finger over here.
that they're adhering to those conditions.
It should be tagged to your business license too, because they're
Mhm.
generating revenue. So your business license, they have to renew it periodically, and that's when you can catch them.
So maybe we'll look at it, but maybe instead of specifying exactly what that emergency situation is,
The hard
we'll
part-
address it one off.
The hard part with this is we regulate it here and it's mainly on the private properties that we're looking at regulating. Outside of this, when I talked to the attorneys about this, they laughed. They were like, literally, is this really a thing? And I'm like, yeah, they're coming and they want this primitive campground and they're signing up for it on a website like Airbnb, reserving spots like Airbnb. And he's like, do they not realize, and you heard it from Cody, it's like, do they not realize that they can primitive camp anywhere on the BLM or the Forest Service already? But it's, I think the luxury of having that safety net there, if you're coming out of Europe and here to the US and you don't want to go backwood, but something like it so I can have that experience. So that's where our regulation really is trying to help with is, well, let's regulate it and make sure that it's healthy and it's safe. But yet knowing across the fence, they could be primitive on a non-accessible road, they're gonna die.
Well, but just your language, let's have a safety net.
Yes.
Suggests to
Yep.
me that, we need to have a little bit of
And that's what
clarity.
this is for.
Well, and the issue I have with these is the density. When you're out in the backwoods, it's just you or you and a buddy. We've got some that they want 80 spots.
Oh, geez.
You're like, whoa, that's not
That's
not called primitive
That's a
camping.
resort. So
And so that's when
primitive resort camping.
they say on their website, like, oh yeah, we're having people pack it out, and you're like, no, people aren't packing it out. And if you get that many people in one spot, it's gonna get ugly fast.
But yet it happens on BLM and Forest Service
Yeah.
lands, and that's where the attorney went with it. He's like, but it's happening naturally already. And so this is kind of just a way to control. hmm Yeah, you can get a permit through the BLM and that for the bigger.
Yeah,
larger
if you're
groups.
having a big family reunion, you're supposed to
Yeah.
get.
So 2D says in areas accessible by emergency services.
Does that mean helicopter? Because I've done that too.
Hey, don't bring Ben Breedlove in with his helicopter.
No promises. Depends on how much you weigh getting you out of there.
So I'm screwed.
So yeah, so that's
Me
that's
too.
a big point with this is density versus
Well, also,
trying to regulate BLM camping.
I have a question about why multiple use zone. Because that's like,
Well, but look at the grander side of multiple use. Most of our outlying lands is multiple use. So
so then how that kind of
So would we
conflicts with-
allow primitive camping in downtown Spanish Valley? Probably
Yes.
not.
So, but it's not listed here as conditional.
No, it is.
Oh,
It
all
is
primitive
conditional.
camping is going to be conditional in all zones. That it's permitted. Okay. All right, good. Because
Not permitted, conditional,
Conditional.
everywhere.
See, you
camping,
could-
period. Right?
You could put a little fire ring out in your front lawn.
I already have that,
Okay.
but
But-
I don't have a pit toilet or.
Oh.
Did you go through the
They'll
proper
pack it out.
permitting process?
Right.
Well, so that
The other thing I added is, and you'll see it pop up, I think 3 times, it says for commercial purposes.
Mhm.
So if you're just going out to camp with somebody and you're not charging any money, you're fine. Because you can't restrict people from using their land. But if they're doing it for commercial purposes, then you have some authority to regulate that.
It's just like the use table. A lot of those things were well, if I'm a residence that has bees, that does not fall in apiary. Like, it has to be a
Commercial.
commercial use.
so
Yeah. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
well, so the fellow who came here who has that primitive campsite near under Canvas, does he have water?
No.
So you're putting something in here. Okay.
No, it doesn't necessarily have to be a well, but we are concerned about having enough water to put out a fire that gets going.
Yeah, and what he is providing is like 5 gallons of water to put out the campfire. He's not thinking about the broader
Yeah.
fire possibility.
So do we need to do something about that, especially if you've got 80 people somewhere?
That's not primitive camping.
That's not. I mean, yeah.
I'm sorry.
It seems to me there ought to be a density limit on it.
Where's that
Well,
peace and
because-
tranquility?
Yeah.
We could look
Well,
at that because
I mean,
the,
you need to define size.
the
Well,
occupancy.
Number of sites per acre.
But so here's the tricky part with primitive versus like glamping or an official camp resort. The primitive camping, there's no site designation, and so it's hard for us to regulate occupancy. Okay, in this acre, maybe looking at it, there's only room for 20 vehicles and a tent, but if they sell 40 slots, that's on you to figure out where you park. How do we regulate that? So we could do a density like per acre, if it's primitive camping. Oh, I'm getting the face from both of them.
It'd be hard to manage.
Hey, Kristen, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
For why my video call I couldn't talk, but so I called in. Anyway, I believe I agree with Melissa or Commissioner Rigg on this one, but I think the answer might be to just refer to the International Fire Code and let that be the regulatory document instead of us having to recreate the wheel on this one.
As far as density or as far as water requirements? Or both?
All of it. Accessibility, water requirements, all that stuff is all in the fire code, and then the liability is then on the fire chief or fire marshal of the area.
Pass the buck.
Works for me, Shay.
I know that's a touchy subject, but it takes the liability off of us as a planning commission, and then we don't have to add all these extra,
Stipulations.
definitions and stipulations and all this stuff because it's already in a code that everybody uses.
Which
Well,
would
and that's
cover
why a lot of our conditional uses refers to following your health department, following your fire department, which is with David. So a lot of our conditional uses, we're kind of pushing this back on other people in those different areas of expertise.
Mm-hmm. And we don't designate exactly what that is. It's just you'll uphold the county health department standards. And
Right.
then it's on
And
them.
business licensing.
And business license
a big
standards
one.
and
Yeah.
because then
So
I agree
does-
with you. Then
does
we
that
don't
take
have
the
to do
liability-
every little nook and cranny of
Yeah.
what they have to do.
Right. And that takes the liability off of us if we're pushing it back on the other expertise in those areas, correct?
Makes sense. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Shay, I'm glad you were here.
Shay made a good point. I mean, it's been a while since we've heard him, but yeah.
I know. I didn't even know he was there.
Lloyd.
Shay, you make sure he sweet talks you after this.
What about distance between other campgrounds? So
I don't think we can dictate that.
I'm pretty sure I was in another.
I mean, we have it in the building code. You have to have
ordinance.
certain width, like the RVs. We were talking about 16 feet between RVs.
But I think she's
She's
talking
talking
about
about campground.
businesses. Like I have a campsite. I have a private campsite resort. You have
You
a
don't wanna
private
do one next
campsite
door?
resort.
Like maybe
Those under
spread them out
campsites
more. So because here's the scenario that I will predict. All that land that Sitla owns wherever, people might want to lease that land to do primitive camping, and Sitla might say yes, and then there'll be another applicant who wants another parcel right next to it, and before you know it, we've got not primitive camping. We'll have just maxed out
Campsites.
and
Loved it to death.
well, does the county benefit from that with all of the potential hazards that it brings as far as fire goes, sanitation, all of that? So would it be wise to spread them out? Like have if you first in line, you get it here, but the next person, you got to do it 5 miles away, or I'm not sure how you would regulate that, but
I actually feel like it'd be better to have them closer together, because if we are upholding the conditions and they are sanitary and they do have the water and they are up to health department code, so
then
why
they're
not
just
have them?
campgrounds? They
Kinda
can't be
share
primitive.
resources,
I mean, I guess that's a difference to me. What are we going to define as campground versus what is primitive?
Primitives, there isn't a designated site. It's
Weird,
just
right?
find a
On
spot in the
private
bushes.
Just go throw your tent out.
Wherever.
A
And then
campground when
collect
you
$40.
reserve that,
It makes
it's
no
I would
sense
like
to me.
site number 16 down by the river, and you book it. With primitive, it's like just pay us some money and find a spot.
Okay, so that, the definition needs to be clarified then, because it says leaving the site in its original condition. It needs to, go back up a bit, okay?
That's just
Primitive camping means in a natural environment with no developed facilities, leaving the site in its original, leaving the property in its original condition?
I think we need to leave it site because it's not a. It's talking about, like, think about an archaeology site, leaving the site as is.
That does not say to me there's no fixed place for you to stay. Like you go to 2A. That does not say that to me.
Where are you reading?
I mean, that's kind of on the business when you go to reserve it and there's nowhere to reserve. So she's reading right here. Develop facilities, leaving the site in its original condition. I feel like that is an appropriate language for that.
I don't know, you talk about it as campsite. This is my campsite.
Yeah.
I
Well,
think
and it
it's
is, 'cause
very,
look below, campsites need to be self-contained. So what it's saying is wherever you're at in the bushes, that is your site. But they don't have a little post with a number on them.
Stacked rocks.
Karen's.
I think this
Yeah.
one's gonna get a lot of public input. Because
We have quite a few.
private primitive
trying.
camping is really out of the norm. Use for private property, you know?
Yeah.
And the implications of that haven't really.
I mean, without speaking too freely here, like this is the next quick buck
But does it.
because people can have totally unimproved land and they literally just take down the fence and they're like, there you go,
And
pay
so
online.
County, is it worth it for the county to allow a bunch of that?
So there's other things like, is anybody going to be on site? You know, we talked about that with the one by Under Canvas. Somebody on site all the time, or are people just out there on their own?
Well, then. Yeah.
And now I think that's a case by case.
So we've got one out here that we permitted a few years ago. And it was,
Yeah.
and it's primitive. I would consider that primitive.
It's active.
The one.
They have a
Big sign out on
Yeah.
the highway. Yeah. Yeah,
and all they did was clear the sagebrush.
yeah. That one you looked at it, Looking Glass, out at Looking Glass, so it was trying to come in. As a conditional, that was theirs, is they had the website, it was up and running, and they were selling access, and you just drive in and park wherever. If you remember right, looking at some of the pictures on there, just the trash and everything that was being brought in through that, and so this is an attempt to try to regulate that. But
We went and inspected it.
yeah, did you guys go look at it when you went out there? Okay, good. And so on this, so you have the regulation that helps with the health and safety and everything that planning is supposed to be looking at. I like the reference with the fire code. A lot of this too is through the business licensing aspect of it, we would capture what small portion of TRT would come off of it as well. And that TRT, 80% of that TRT has to be spent on marketing efforts, which we typically do, but then you mitigate the rest of it, which goes into your landfill, your policing,
EMS.
emergency services, and so it's kind of covered on the TRT. The hard part is this isn't your money making. I mean, you're going to sell maybe $30 for access to camp wherever, and so your $30 isn't going to generate a lot.
$1.50
of money, but
TRT.
Yeah. So it's not gonna be a big generator. It's just to try to give some regulations behind it, so that they know that don't be cop in a squat by the bush. You know, it's got to be
Because
in a porta john or a
Yeah.
porta potty or something that is taken out. You haul your water in. You got to be safe with your campfires and your distance between units.
how about distance from existing residents and distance from established recreation? Well, I don't know. Some maybe established recreational trails. Like it's kind of like, oh, you go up into the mountains and you're
We could do
hiking
that.
the Uwal or some trail, and oh, there's somebody. I mean, I know that's Forest Service, but there's private
Private camping.
property scattered around in the mountains, and you could be on something, and then there's somebody primitive camping.
Yeah.
You know, it's
Keep in mind that this isn't necessarily an all-inclusive list. This is kind of more the standards. And let's say somebody wanted to put in a camp park right in the middle of multi-use Spanish Valley. Like we could, as part of the conditions, put in buffer zones. No, you can't.
I don't see. I see most of these when I see them out and about. So you have some there, and so you got southern Utah. You cross the border into Arizona. You see some that are just off of the highway that are literally primitive campsites, and they'll have a designated fire ring. Outside of that, they don't have anything else, and they are always full during the summer. And so it's that type of a thought. I don't think they'll be clear up in the mountains, you know, where cars can't get to. Typically, they're right off the side of the highway.
And the applications
Easy
we have
accessible.
and the ones we know of right now are right on the highway.
okay.
Tourists don't, and I think that's what gives them that sense of security is that they're off of the highway, yet they kind of have that experience with the remoteness and being in the desert and experiencing the dark skies. You don't tend to see them taking the tourists up in the mountains,
Mm-hmm.
back on the primitive trails in their Prius or their Tesla.
So while you're enjoying your campfire, you get to hear the Jake brake hit the hill. And think
And
just
a lot
wilderness.
of it, so a lot of it, when we talk to the tour guides that are coming out of Europe and that, this is exactly what they want. Is they want to experience the culture and the desert, and they don't want to be stuck in a hotel. They want to be out with the rattlesnakes and trying to figure it out like they see in the westerns or the movies.
So how can we keep them isolated from existing residential,
I don't know. I mean, again, I think it's a problem that's going to resolve itself. The applications we have are
They're
properties
remote.
that are
off
out,
of the highway.
scattered.
that are very remote?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, like I don't
Looking
necessarily
at
see this
some-
coming into downtown Spanish Valley.
No.
Well, yeah, and I would hope though that our definition is clear enough that somebody doesn't try to redefine this as something that should be
I don't think you'll see a lot of it.
in their backyard.
The difficulty one with the looking glass is typically outside of the city proper is you have mass acreage. And when you start discussing with them, so that when we tabled that item out at Looking Glass, it was, have you talked to the owner about your rollback taxes, taking it out of the green belt? That's what kind of stopped it. Is like, well, you're going to take 500 acres out of Greenbelt for a primitive camping site? And he's like, wait, what? And so when he's speaking with the assessor, that was kind of like, okay, yeah, we can't do that. And so I think typically what you'll see is that will be controlled because of that. I can't see the ranchers giving up a lot of acreage just
So what about
for
parcel
a primitive
size?
campground.
What about what?
We determine parcel size, a range.
You could do that, but you're still, I don't know. The one in northern Arizona, literally they took and subdivided their ranch. But it was that next generation that wasn't into ranching, so they didn't care, and they just paid Greenbelt, roll back on that subdivided piece to get the primitive camping going.
Fascinating.
Interesting,
Yeah.
and it would be hard to me. You take these as they come. I think would be easier. we see a handful of applicants starting to come with this, but not a massive rush.
There hasn't been, I don't know, questionable locations. They're all very remote.
Right off the road, right off the highway, like Looking Glass, like
Pretty
the one
much
in
all
Mexican
rural off
Hat.
the highway.
But remote in the sense of
Not adjacent to the towns, other than the one that you
Yeah.
have out here in Eastland. That's kind of outside of Monticello proper.
Well, it's 5 miles out there. It's not
Yeah,
Eastland. It's quite a ways.
this side,
Mm-hmm.
the brochures.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But again, this is conditional, so we can case by case it. These are just trying to give people general guidelines of what they're getting into, especially if people are looking at parcels that they want to buy as investment.
that's why like I got an acre. I'm gonna milk that 1 acre.
Yeah.
Can you tell us again which zones they're conditional in?
So it was ag, multi-use, and recreational support. It's under camp, parks, and resorts.
So it's not allowed in residential.
Correct.
You kind of see that at the base of the hill, Blue Hill, as you're coming down into Spanish Valley. You kind of see that primitive camping right off the side of the road there. There's typically around 10 and 15 trailers that are parked right around there.
Trucks
and
coming
that's
off
all-
of
Doing
the
the
hill.
primitive camping thing.
Right. And
Yeah,
but
that's
all
just people
set
pulling
up.
off, and here's a place to park, and then they go up in the hills with their razors and side by sides afterwards.
That's all I'm thinking about is like location that's appropriate and density and
Yeah, they're typically outside of town, away from everybody. That's the experience that they want. That's what the travelers are telling us, that if you can place a hogan out there, they would like to stay in it. Type.
But you can have an RV on one of these spots too.
Mm-hmm.
So again, it'd be RV without a
Without a
hookup.
hookup.
But we also want to address some of the sanitation stuff with that as well.
Well, that could help with housing, the housing problem.
So, but I understand what Ann's talking about. Should there be some, it cannot be within X distance of a area that's residentially zoned? Because if I remember right, I mean, if you think about Spanish Valley, there are all those gravel pits, and they're zoned agriculture, right?
Industrial. They will be zoned industrial.
They will be zoned industrial, okay. And this isn't allowed in the industrial?
No.
Okay.
Anything else? Primitive camping?
If you thought primitive camping took a while,
Sorry, that's
the overnight.
Hold on, we're getting there. Don't jump the gun on me. Glamping resorts.
Oh,
Similar.
But opposite.
There's a lot of definitions in with this. They're allowed in recreational sport and multi-use. I think the one thing different with glamping versus camping is that you usually have some structures involved somewhere along the way, and we've addressed it here with the International Building Code. So you have to comply with state and county requirements on health. Again, if anything's built, it has to uphold our typical building codes.
So glamping isn't listed.
On the table.
So it would be under camping and resorts unless we want to make another one.
Camp park / resorts.
Oh, but that's still primitive.
I guess glamp kind of
Primitive
has the
and
word
safe.
camp in
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
Would
I'm
you
good
like
with-
me to also say glamping under there?
No.
Camp parks, resorts, glamping.
Nope.
It's a camp park.
Okay.
What's the definition? Can you scroll back up to the top for
Mhm.
definition of glamping?
A term for glamorous camping, as per Webster.
As in $750 a night. Glamorous.
Seriously?
Hmm.
It's pretty pricey.
Fancy.
And they're sold out.
He said 750 to 900 per night.
Golly.
I just don't get it.
Advertising
Hell,
is a
you could buy
powerful
the
tool.
tent.
A box of matches, I'm good.
So if I understand right, the glamping site has to be between 70 and whatever, some amount of square feet, and then they have to be 2,000 feet away from each other?
Well, for like a dwelling unit, it's upholding International Building Code for a habitable space. The reason why there's all these other setbacks and distance away is because something is built. Either a lot of them are built on a deck, so there's like some sort of deck system, maybe some interior wall space, and then they have the canvas around them. And so this is definitely pulling a lot from the building code. So you have to have 2,000 square feet per unit.
Can you explain the ratio?
Yeah, that maximum glamping unit area to lot area ratio is 2/3. So this is protecting if you have a really, really small lot that you don't have more than 66% covered in canvas.
Hmm.
You know, 1,000 square foot max, so that if your tent's on fire, you can get out quickly. 1,000 square foot tent, that's a big tent. It's my house. It's a big tent.
It's more for the gathering area.
Probably.
So these actually have a lot more regulation on them because it's built.
70 square feet.
So I'm sort of stuck on the pit toilets, not permitted. So all sanitary facilities will meet San Juan County Public Health Department requirements
So this means
for
septic system.
what? For construction, for
For sanitation facilities. So these guys are going to be either on a like combined not public, but a combined system, wastewater system, or each individual one will be on its own septic
Or
tank.
chemical toilet.
Or chemical.
so San Juan County Public Health Department doesn't have requirements for pit toilets.
We do.
I missed that question.
There is something for pit toilets. San Juan County Health
I
Department
just-
does have
Toilets
something
are
for
not
health departments.
permitted.
I think it just needs to be clarified that these are, I see that toilets are not permitted, but I think it needs to say sanitary facilities will meet San Juan County Public Health Department requirements for
Sanitary facilities.
Like
I
leach.
think it should be done.
for
Your septic system leach or
Wastewater.
for septic systems for I think it
Well,
needs
but we need to cover all of it because it's also
some
like
haul out.
water and. So I don't want to specify wastewater because then it limits us.
All gray water or so like if you think of the one that you toured out at Looking Glass, I mean That one there has their own restrooms within the restaurant itself. A little bit different dynamics.
For culinary and wastewater.
Hmm. That one's actually pretty nice.
Well, and the entire property is on a septic system.
Uh-huh.
Wasn't there something about potable water a little further up? On your
Yeah.
document?
Yeah, so
Wastewater,
here's your-
human.
Your
Potable,
Potable
water
is all up
system,
here.
systems are required.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, potable water.
G. What are we doing for wastewater sanitary inspections right now?
We have a environmental health scientist that's in training.
Oh.
And until he's all fully trained and certified, we've got Jones and DeMille that we're
Mm.
contracting with, as well as a gentleman out of Richfield.
Is Rick still certified?
Is who?
Rick Meyer?
He is. Yep. He does some every once in a while, but where he's the assessor, he didn't want to
Cross
do that
that
for the
line.
county. It was more of the last ditch effort if we couldn't find anybody else. And so Jones and DeMille, they've got a consultant that they've hired through them. And so until our guy gets up to speed, he's been on as an employee for I think 3 months now,
Okay.
4 months now.
Okay.
And so
I mean,
he'll
I
be-
applied for it, but I didn't get an
see, I
interview.
think this.
Whatever. Did you really?
No.
It's like whatever. That would be an interesting job. Because they do the restaurant inspections and pool inspections and
Yeah,
food handler permit. It's a pretty big role.
I was thinking it was just age discrimination.
Yeah. Big pal.
So there you had you just scrolled over contain no more than XXX units per acre. Is that a consideration or is that something you're wanting to fill a number in?
We would have to.
Well, that would limit it to the 2,000 feet per unit.
Mm-hmm.
And you could do it that way. There's so it's going to be
Yeah, I
about
think it's kind of redundant because we already specified it
Yeah.
above.
How many square feet are in an acre?
52,560.
560.
43,560.
Is it?
43,560.
560.
Okay.
Okay.
So,
So that
20
means you-
units.
We just got
20.
dyslexic up
Yeah,
here.
40, 40,
Did you
40,
see that?
560.
20, 21, 22 in.
Okay.
But you have all the other facilities that will
The restaurants
Takes
or
time.
whatever.
have glamping. So there's like staging areas, there's gathering spaces. Numbers probably going to drop.
Unless
They
they,
have a common toilet, which is within 200 feet of every tent.
Mm-hmm.
I just think that the least dense, the better, because you crowd people in, just get conflicts. I think
People
in every
lighting each
scenario.
other's tents on fire in the middle of the night.
Yeah, or property owners who have dueling glamp grounds. I just think people should be spread out as much as possible.
Was there a key to get into the tent?
There's a zipper so you can hear them coming.
Oh, okay.
You have to take into account there's also a market factor in this. That sometimes as planning people, we forget that there's a market in the background that's saying, I get one bad star no one's gonna come back.
Yeah. They're pretty nice.
But not
And there's an
$900
AI out there
nice.
now doing
And
it
they're
for you.
booked.
I
Solid.
know.
And so
It'll stay the same.
they could do more.
And they say their average stay is 3 nights.
Yeah. This is crazy.
Free right next
So why are we not continuing doing what we've been doing with fire and health department? Allowing the health department to have jurisdiction over their water, their sewer, and then the fire department having the jurisdiction over the water storage and things like that.
Well, this one does reference it quite a bit. It references the International Building Code, which would also reference International Fire Code.
Mm-hmm.
And San Juan County Public Health and
Yeah.
DEQ.
So
Right.
it's the same.
Okay. So as long as we're
We did
pushing the
push on
liability back on the health department and the fire department, then
Yeah.
you know what, we're covering our bases, especially in 99% of our conditional use, where we always throw those two things in our conditional uses. Correct?
Yeah.
Correct.
I think it's just the extra that you add. If you remember right, with the looking glass, you required some improvements on the road as part of their conditional use, kind of better
Right.
signage,
Yep.
things like that. That one that was out towards the Grand Canyon across from Potash, that was where we got more into the health side of it, the safety, life safety.
Mhm.
Yeah, keep in mind this is not all inclusive. This is just, hey, I was thinking of doing a glamping resort. Well, go check out some of our standard
Mm-hmm.
requirements, what that entails.
And that was just kind of a private owner that needed a better use of his land that jumped into that one without, so he wasn't a professional like your glamping that you typically see. This was just a private property owner that wanted to do the same thing, yet has no regulation or the business sense to apply to it. That's where we place the conditions that you've got to have this and this. If you go to the Looking Glass site, they have all of that. They have the brochures and the information, the med tent, things like that, where this private individual had nothing like that.
I just had a thought. So we've got an ordinance for short-term rentals, but this is a short-term rental, right? And
Overnight stay, yeah.
yeah, primitive campsites are also short-term rentals.
But this would classify as camp, not short-term rental.
Okay.
When you're looking at the use table.
And you'll kind of see a difference when we get to the short-term rental section of this. You'll kind of
It's
see
coming.
a different. You'll get a different sense
Okay.
of how we're going to be handling those
We're almost
compared to
there. You
these.
guys excited?
I'm excited.
Okay. Last one before the
boy.
real doozy, RV parks.
Well, this one's a doozy too.
This one isn't. One thing Mac and I have been discussing a lot, maybe he should give me that, is, how do we want to, I shouldn't even say it. Do we want to attempt some sort of long-term something? Right now we have the possibility that you can apply throughout anywhere. You can apply for a temporary RV habitation while you build. And we've granted a couple of those while you guys have been here. We have a major concern with trying to get people through the ladder of housing and don't want to make RV slums where people will just never get pushed into a more permanent housing option.
Yeah, and there are a whole bunch of people I work with who live in RVs. So, you know.
Can you have names and addresses for that? We'll go
I
get
know.
'em.
Are they? Yeah.
The idea of having them get permits, you know.
So it used to be, and this is kind of when you look at the planning senses, it used to be in your cities you were working to get the mobile home parks out. I mean, those were your last developable areas. They were also that low income threshold and typically your higher crime rate and everything in your mobile home park areas. And now, trend, because of the housing shortage, you're seeing, like you had mentioned, that people are now living in their RVs, but it should never work itself into becoming a permanency. So like it's
Sorry, Mac, but you're
Today-
a white male saying that.
well, no, so there is that, but what we're seeing is if you're not fixed to the property, you know, or how safe is that? I mean, you're basically we've got it here is in order to get an employee from state fire, well, we can hire this assistant fire marshal and he'll come down and he'll stay in the RV on a seasonal basis, yet it's not fixed. It's not, is that habitable long term? Well, now your RVs are a little bit more habitable long term. They come with your CO2 detectors and your fire detectors and things, your fire extinguishers in the RVs, whereas before in the past there was never that. And so what we worry about on the housing side of it is does this now become your affordable housing, which is typically what we're seeing is this is now your affordable housing. I can get an RV and bring my family here and live in San Juan County. Well, in that, when you look on a tax collector side of it, is they're not paying property tax. They're just paying their space. They're not affixed or attached to the ground. So we can't tax them on a personal property tax with contents in their RV. And so it's kind of like this, we're stuck in
And if
between
they're
the.
not taking it on the road, it doesn't get registered through the DMV.
But these are poor people.
These are poor
Yeah,
people,
so
absolutely.
the idea.
Or they're not even poor people. They're
Yeah.
Yeah.
to move to Monticello. I mean, you're $400,000 home. That's just not average income San Juan County affordable. And so you take up north and you compound it a little bit more. You're $700,000 to get into a starter home, and an RV I can get one for $200,000. It's affordable. And so, do we start allowing them into these RV parks as long-term residential units that still have the tires on to avoid a property tax or a personal property tax?
Well, I do think about in Bluff, this is one of the housing options in Bluff. And 2 years ago, I guess it was, they kicked out all the Bluff RV park owners, kicked out all the permanent people. And I don't know why. I don't know if it was state code that changed or rules that changed, but it did take out a lot of housing. And most of those people did not have a way to relocate in town elsewhere. They just left.
With their RVs.
Sometimes you just left them there. And so see,
'cause that's
there's
the thing,
the
it
flip
should be
side of it.
Running, removable, or
So that's
Mobile,
the flip.
yeah.
That's the ugly side of
yeah.
if we make this allowed, and now you literally have permitted RV slums. And how?
Or
do
instead of a
we-
home, single family home next to your property, they're living on an RV. So in LaSalle, we've got
a lot.
people that have moved into the RVs on a adjacent piece of property and like, hey, that there's nowhere in the CCNRs that are allowing that. So county, you need to come in and tell them that they can't. It's not a stick frame house, but yet they're worried about their property values now tanking because they've got all of these RVs that have popped up adjacent to their property and they want the county to fix it.
but it's in an RV park. That's
No,
different.
this
No,
is
this is just private.
this is just
land.
RVs that are
Okay, but we're talking about
being
RV
pulled on
parks
the
here, though, right?
property.
So if it's an
Long-term
RV park,
housing option.
So this chapter is RV parks, and we're saying okay, on private property, there's that 28-day limit in a calendar year. And if you're gonna go beyond that, let's say you're building your house, you gotta apply for a temporary conditional use permit. So in any private property, that's the case. This being an RV park where you've got 40 slots, do we?
Yeah, Forest Service employees live in there full time all year long.
I
Well,
don't see
like we
anything
had
wrong with it.
we had the
Ranches
worker
owners.
bees in for the solar farm that were there for 3 years, and they've got their kids with them and the dog and all the things.
But it's hard to regulate. So if you wanted to make it a certain percentage, you're saying to create RVs, like some of them in the RV park, or like a percentage of,
Don't think we could uphold that.
right? Okay, so it's either all or it's up to the RV park owner whether or not they were going to allow everybody to be a long-term resident or just some of them to be a long-term resident.
So economically, an RV park is a commercial business. An RV park would be doing TRT tax. It would be, the property tax would be based on an RV park. So economically for us as a county, we're collecting property taxes on an RV park, whether they are doing long-term or short-term. We're still going to be assessing it as a RV park, and we're also going to be collecting TRT tax on them because an RV park is commercial, correct?
Yes.
So more or less, whether they're running long-term or short-term, if we're doing some employee housing for Forest Service, BLM, whatever it might be, we're still collecting the same amount of taxes, property, and through TRT and sales tax, correct?
Even if it's at a reduced rate, like let's say they charged you $500 a month instead of
Right.
$100 a night.
Well, in some cases, well, and I look at it, you know, being in the business is sometimes you take a lesser amount to fill nights. You know what I mean?
Right.
So if that camp park is not, as a business owner, you're going to look at it this way. Okay, I only have 10% vacancy through the year. Well, then I'm going to keep going the way I am. But if I have a lot of vacancy through the year, I'm going to start doing the long term. So it's kind of a trade-off, and especially for people that are trying to make money at it. If I'm not getting the income from the nightly charges, I'm going to turn it into long term. So, I mean, it's kind of a trade-off. Yeah, I've got an empty week this week and these guys want to stay. I can do it at a lesser price, blah, blah, blah.
I guess I got kind of mixed up in what we were trying to accomplish with this. I don't see as much of an issue with an RV park being long term as much as I have an issue with
Private property.
property and pulling your,
Correct.
and that's your permanent residence. I have a problem with that. You stack hay bales around it so you can survive the winter.
So this would be
Park.
park and regulated by health department, building codes, all the rest of it. And if it's up to that commercial owner of whether they want to do long term or short term.
I would like to have faith that our RV park owners would do a good job
Right.
managing these,
Yeah.
you know, much needed housing units for long term.
Okay. And RV parks, let me find it. RV parks are allowed, or conditionally allowed in ag, highway, commercial, multi-use, and recreational support. So we would, it's conditional across board. So take a look at what they got planned.
I'm good with that.
I think in multiple use, it's still got to follow density requirements, though, right?
Well, and building codes. So like the 16-foot spacing for fire protection and stuff like that would be in place.
Okay. Because I don't, again, like in multiple use, high density housing, all of that seems appropriate. Just, I guess, making sure that the RV parks aren't going to be any more dense than that, or the requirements are proportionate for density.
Okay, do you guys need a break or you just want to go for it?
Go. Let's go.
Can I just ask a question? So if I have an RV park, I own a lot, and I put an RV park on there. I mean, not an RV park, I put an RV on there. And I say, to heck with the county ordinance, I'm gonna live in my RV. I mean, what do you,
Or
it's
your
my,
kids.
it's my property. I maintain it. I mean, what are you gonna do?
A neighbor will call you in that you're living in an RV and it's shabby over there.
Yeah, but what are you gonna do? You're gonna come get, the sheriff and
The planning administrator would be.
Don't point the finger this way. So technically, yes. Technically, the sheriff would be out and give you a ticket. And if you don't pay the ticket, it can lead to misdemeanors and jail.
But they could provide you another place to live.
That's where
Well,
the jail.
there
That's
we
where the
go.
jail time comes.
There
in.
we go.
Somebody else cooks for you.
Yeah, get 3 squares.
That's right.
See, I mean that it does bring up a big question. Like we and our attorneys are on board with this. Like it's been pretty Wild West out there, and people have kind of done whatever the hell they want. And we're with this new ordinance getting pushed through. We are also pushing like, look, we've opened up a lot of opportunity, but you need to stay in line. So that's our compromises. We've opened up a lot of things here, but it's not a free for all. And as we push this hard, we're going to be pushing the violations hard on the flip side of this adoption.
Okay, so one question on that one.
Oh,
So,
great. What?
so one of the ones
There's a new sheriff in
that
town, Lloyd.
came to us lately on Terra Drive that had, I believe it was 21 spots, or 24. Correct me.
For his family.
Yeah.
So that gentleman owns 2.56 acres. The front, at least the front acre, has his home, shop, and yard. So that leaves, approximately 1.5 acres. You were stating something and this will be part of the mixed use area. Is that will limit the amount of spots that he's able to have in that 1.5 acres behind his residence, correct?
Correct. So right now, I don't know if you can see it on number 3. It says limited to 9 units per acre.
Okay. So that will start limiting some of these larger ones that are existing, not existing or non-conforming. Well, they're not even non-conforming. They're use at this point.
I thought he was not legal to begin with.
Right. It's an illegal. It's not a non-conforming. I'm sorry.
So, but he wouldn't be able to do anything under this.
As
new-
As it stands right now, but with the new map, he would be able to have.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, he's
He
being
would be able
moved.
to.
Mm-hmm.
Mixed
And
use.
that is how we can help get some people into compliance. Because
Okay.
Mac and I'll throw your name in on this. Agree, like, okay, somebody's out of compliance. How do we
Get them.
find some middle ground, or how do we get them to be compliant instead of just being like, no, no, no? How can they work towards being compliant?
Okay.
Take the
And
wild out of Wild West.
The
take the wild out of
non-conforming,
the
yeah.
west.
I worry the only issues, what I would be concerned with, especially in Spanish Valley, is the cost of your homes are so high. Same with Moab. your RV parks then become your long-term housing. And they just, for me, it'd be cheaper for $500 a month RV spot and a payment of $1,000. I don't have an RV, but I would imagine that'd be it. So $1,500 a month, I have a home, in Spanish Valley, because we allow for the long-term RV park to be it. And so then all of a sudden you get the Moab feed over, because Spanish Valley is now affordable on the RV park side of it by allowing for the long term. In essence, you've created trailer parks. Lloyd laughs. Lloyd, why was he laugh?
What's wrong with creating trailer parks? I'm just trying to follow the logic.
So there's nothing wrong with them, but typically even Moab closed down theirs because of the liability. And so you see those starting to come across the fence. And if you're okay with that, that's fine.
What's the liability?
So in the Moab one, I think the city owned that property,
They bought it.
and they couldn't get an insurance company to insure it.
Oh, you're talking
Okay.
about
But
Walnut Lane.
but but let me back this up real quick.
Those are dilapidated.
Before the city of Moab decided to buy this trailer park in Walnut Lane, it was a perfectly fine
Mobile.
trailer. Well, I'm not going to go perfectly fine, but it was a trailer park
Mostly fine.
in Walnut Lane that housed a lot of people. That the city of Moab decided they were going to buy it to make housing
A
for
development.
employees.
Yeah.
Well, then they decided to kick them all out. So it was the reasoning for them to kick all these people out was because the city of Moab's insurance, it did create a liability for the city of Moab, because the city of Moab should have never purchased the land from
In the
the
first place.
private landowner.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, because Walnut Lane, when I was a kid, was a nice place. There was actually a little convenience store down there. It was a nice trailer park back in the day. But then the city of Moab stepped in and decides that they're going to purchase it. Well, now they kick everybody out and they can't get anything done. You look at Holiday Haven, which is a Grand Oasis now, a very nice private trailer park. They used to, when I was younger, have full-time RV livers in there in the bottom area of it. And it was always a nice place. So I'm kind of with Ann on this one. If the city of Moab wouldn't have stepped in and decided that they were going to purchase private land to create affordable housing and then foul it all up, it would have still been a very good place for people to live in.
Just managed, right?
Well, so what about building code? Is there, or I don't know if it applies here to RVs at all, but can't you regulate, like, okay, this, you're out of compliance. This one is too old. You have to get out. Evict people out of them.
Have to upgrade
Can
your
on
RV.
trailer houses.
No.
'Cause
Anything prior to 1978, which was somewhere in there, close to, it was prior to HUD taking over and creating certain regulations for mobile homes, which is your HUD homes. But that does not follow suit with RVs.
So is there
Yeah,
anything
that's more single wives versus.
is there
RV
anything
with
for
wills.
RVs? Is what I'm saying as far as
Nope, they do not have a permanent living. I don't know what the proper wording is for them, but I mean, there is a lot of like Durango, Colorado, Telluride. They have a lot of these. I don't know if you call them what you call them, but retirees that like to go in there and they'll live for 5 or 6 months in that area, and then they'll move out when it gets too cold and go to other areas, which is a lot of retired folks that have RVs and they're full-time living in them, and they just go with the seasons from one place to the other, but they'll be there for 4 or 5 months. And I mean that's happening all over the place. Because, like Max said earlier, I mean, a mortgage is well over $3,000 a month right now. To where if you can get just in front of me here at Reed Pendleton, the used to be St. Mains, I don't know what it is now. He has selected a few spots in there for some long-term housing that are $500 or $600 a month for, and there's some workers from LeGrand and other places close to that we're actually able to house them. So I mean, for me, I look at these RV parks, and if it's beneficial to the owner of them to have some that are employee housing, I think it's beneficial to the county too.
I think it's an area that residents are going to have to kind of give a little on because of the housing shortage problem. But I also think it's been said that, you know, developers are going to eventually have to give a little on what they are expecting when it comes to
For the
profits
housing.
for building. But I think in the short term, this is a good, you know,
Band-Aid.
yeah. Especially because
We've
these
been
RVs
good
are
at
so
that.
nice these days. I mean,
Well, and I think what our conversation on the phone earlier, like this probably does make money for someone. So it is worthwhile for them to do that. Don't have to be there to check people in and out. It's
Well,
stable.
and we need to get that RV manufacturer in to our commercial area,
There you go.
Industrial.
So,
industrial.
at the risk of going down a different rabbit hole,
Oh.
just a really quick question.
Yeah, right.
Am I missing, where's the difference between like a traditional trailer park and an RV park?
So
Where's that at?
it's under manufactured home. Where is it? Manufactured home. Oh shoot, where is it? Hold on. It's in here.
We did talk about it.
Which it does need to change too, for the simple fact that there's a huge difference between a HUD and an IRC. They're both manufactured.
Right.
But a HUD or a IRC has to have a permanent foundation.
Yep.
Even though it's considered a manufactured home in the state of Utah, it has to have a permanent foundation, which in a trailer park,
There
you would
it
be
is. It's
HUDs open.
But it's not listed specifically.
I can't remember what I put it under. It's in here. I thought it was under manufactured home.
Yeah, it is.
And-
Manufactured homes. It's
But
out of
that's,
order.
Yeah, but
it's
it's-
below mining.
Well, but that's
That's
tiny home
fabrication,
fabrication.
Manufactured home sales.
Yep.
So we got fabrication and sales.
Yep. You can build them, you can sell them.
You
Just want to know where you can live in them at.
You know, I think we. I remember we talked about it. As far as like single wides and that go, I think we just put them under single family residence. But it does raise the question, like if we have a trailer park,
Like the Grand
not an
Oasis.
RV
Yeah,
park,
Right.
like a trailer park where it's single wides,
Right. Single
brought
family
in.
homes. Yeah.
put on a foundation.
Nope.
high density.
No, that's not a trailer home then. I think that
No.
is a manufacturer.
Trailer
No
park.
foundation. It'll have jacks and tie downs.
Waiting
And
for a tornado.
as long as it has a
Yes.
tie down, it counts as being affixed to the property.
No, it does not.
Yes, it does.
You're incorrect. No, it's considered personal property.
You can't have
Um,
tires on it. You gotta pop the tires and strap it down. You're good.
Right, absolutely. And so that's where the whole trailer park and HUD comes in, because if you have a trailer house, you personally own a trailer house, you're living in a trailer park, the owner of the trailer park is paying property taxes. You are paying personal property taxes on that trailer house.
Correct.
It is actually registered through the DMV because it has a serial number on it or a VIN number, which is different from a IRC or a stick-built home. They are part of the property.
So we've been talking with the assessor's office about this, that anything that is tied down counts as residential.
Nope. No, you have to
No.
surrender
We're,
title to the
we're writing
property
that.
to be a home.
we're
And Rick's
writing
wrong
that.
on that one. Rick is wrong. You have to surrender the title to a HUD home to a piece of property for it to be able to be assessed as real property. If that title is not surrendered to the property, it is personal property, because you can pick that home up and move it to another piece of property. So it has to be assessed differently. So you have property tax on real property, and then
That's
you have
why
personal property.
you get the certificate of
Fixation.
of fiction.
Yeah.
No, you have to get a certificate, because we just talked about modulars and how that goes.
Not of
And
occupancy.
so you have to, in order to get a certificate of occupancy, you have to have it affixed. And you have to have that certificate from the building inspector, and then it changes with
So-
the county recorder or the assessor's office.
And so the only way that process can go through is you do not get a certificate of occupancy if you are just setting a HUD home. You get a final inspection and a completion of setup. So if we're issuing certificate of occupancy on a HUD home that you are not surrendering the title to the county as part of that property, we're illegal. Rick's wrong on that. Absolutely
Boyd,
wrong.
I will take this up with you later.
Okay, sorry.
But trailer parks, do we want to include on our use table trailer park? Different from RV parks, different from single family dwelling or temporary RV dwelling.
People still make trailers? I just haven't seen like the kind you could buy
Like a little single
Oasis.
wide.
Yeah.
in Grand Oasis.
79,000 in Grand Junction.
100% HUD homes are sold all over the place.
Okay.
Well, it
Trailer
sounds
park,
like San Juan County's gonna fix
So it
Grand
should-
County's
agriculture.
problem after.
Right? What'd you say? Trey?
Well, so where do we want to
Ag.
allow the high density single wide neighborhood? Do we allow it in residential?
No.
Mixed.
Do we allow it in ag?
Yes.
Yes.
Permitted or conditional?
Permitted.
Do we allow it in highway commercial?
Nope.
Yeah, I'm right there.
Community commercial?
Ooh, hold on a minute.
Nope.
That's yellow, right?
I'm gonna say
That's red.
So
That's
I'd say yes.
multifamily and apartments are allowed, so as conditional
In community commercial?
in community commercial.
Do you want to say
So-
conditional?
I would love to see Sitla put trailer park in their community commercial.
And multi-use?
Well, so just a
I
sec.
would say yes.
Just a sec. So if you look at what we did the other day,
Maybe we
multifamily / apartments are conditional in residential, community commercial, and multiple use.
What if we add trailer parks to that multifamily apartments?
Yeah,
Trailer parks.
I think that works.
And have it conditional in residential, highway commercial, or I'm sorry, residential, community commercial, and multi-use.
I think we probably have to add ag into that though, honestly.
Okay. And do you want it conditional across the board?
Mhm.
Okay. So we'll say dwelling. So we'll go under dwelling. Trailer parks. Affixed.
Appraised by the county
And we'll
assessor.
have it
Title
residential,
surrendered.
ag, community commercial, and multi-use conditionally.
What's a
Found a hole
fraction
and
of
fixed
the ER, Lloyd? What's the
Yeah.
fractional ERU that one trailer would use?
And so it depends on the size.
In Grand Oasis, pick any one of those.
12 by 70.
So, okay, so if we, in Spanish Valley, anything less than 700 square feet is 0.56 ERUs. Anything over 700 square feet is 1 ERU.
12 by 6.
And so, and the reason we have that is because if you have an ADU
Residential
unit,
unit.
Right.
Residential
Okay.
unit.
yes, then we're able to because they're using their same water and sewer lines without creating more taps. We're able to give them the ability to have an ADU unit if they keep it under 700 square feet. And these are all based off of Grand counties.
What about Sean Campbell's old place when they expanded? What did those EDUs like for a?
Oh, so every spot is 0.79
For
of an ERU. And so, and basically just a recap on that. So, a single ERU is right around 8,000 to 9,000 per ERU for impact fees. And so every campsite was 0.79 of an ERU. So I mean, a lot of this is substantial to us. We're not getting the water use you would think out of a campground, but we're collecting the impacts that help our system.
Having these affordable units, whether or not it's trailer parks, RV, long-term RV.
Yep.
We could see our population just blow up and potentially.
So in a water use, and the way I look at it, you're going to use.
You worry about the water. I'm not worried about the water.
Well,
This is
I
just
am
water.
because I look at it this way. You have that dense housing. You know that 90% of the water use in the city of Moab is landscaping, trees, things like that. Where for us, we start creating this dense, a trailer park or things like that. Now we've really decreased the amount of water usage because we don't have all that landscaping. And a single family home is anywhere between 3,000 to 5,000 gallons a month for a single family residence, where a single family residence on the middle of an acre, they're using 30,000, 40,000 gallons a month because of landscaping. So for us down here, water is very crucial, and surprising enough, the more dense the housing is, the less water usage we have.
It's better bang for the buck.
Mhm.
But so I guess I was just saying more density in our valley and or other hot spots in the county. If we have this in our ordinance for permitting all of this, I'm just throwing out what are the unforeseen consequences, implications, anything that we need to think about as far as sudden growth, rapid growth, like roads, infrastructure. That's kind of why I was bringing up the water thing, and not as far as having enough, but hooking up enough, fast enough for. I would think there's going to be a big demand. But maybe.
Right.
And that would be on the, whoever's the RV trailer park owner, whatever, that they would put in all that infrastructure.
Yeah. Well, I'm just throwing it out there as far as the market. If we're talking about the market,
I think
we could have a sea of trailer parks.
Both these chapters really do open up. Not both these chapters, RV parks and trailer parks both open up options.
Yeah.
Okay, you guys ready?
The finale.
We got
Finale.
15 minutes.
That's not enough time for nightly rentals.
All right, here we go. There's a lot of red in here. A lot of red.
If I can read through that in 15 minutes.
And
Kristen, can you put it on the screen?
it is on the screen.
All I see is a map.
I'll go put it.
Oh, I got my best man on it.
Max sharing the screen.
Thank you.
To do it on yours.
So this one is definitely. Oh, here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There we
Can
go.
you see it now?
I can. Thank you.
Okay, so short-term rentals is huge. I think instead of getting stuck in the nitty-gritty today, why don't we just do an overview? We can all sleep on it. And then this one is definitely under legal review right now.
So we still won't get to see it.
You're seeing it!
I know it, but to spend some time with it.
So there was some Utah code that came out here that we have to allow in residential. Now, what percentage or density or every 3 doors or every 2 doors, what counts as a door if you have an apartment on the side in a corner. Mac and I were figuring out ways to loophole this earlier. You know, so we really need to think about, right now it's conditional across the board and it is allowed in, it's conditional in residential as per whatever density we've set. So keep that one in mind. Less regulatory, but still conditional in ag, community commercial, multi-use, and recreational support. So I want you to kind of think of this as 2 subsections. We're definitely going to have some stipulations of short-term rentals in residential areas, and then we have short-term rentals kind of in the other zones.
2 months ago, we said that they aren't allowed in
Correct.
residential. Why did we say it 2 months ago?
The state
Because
legislature.
It was getting out of hand, and we just had to
Started.
shut it down quickly to salvage what we had. Now Utah state code trumps us, and they're saying you have to allow something in residential, but you get to decide what that something is.
What is the ordinance number for that, or this new bill, or whatever?
So what is the number for the new bill?
Is that what you're referencing?
The code.
Kristen?
Yeah,
It is
the
a
Utah
legal
state
finding from the
code.
Utah Ombudsman's office.
I don't
What's-
know
I'm
if
sorry?
it is in here. Is it?
If it isn't, I erased it.
Well, we haven't even gotten to look at this till
Yeah,
this
no.
moment, so
We've been,
if it was in there, I wouldn't know.
and a lot of it
We can get
is
for you.
is mainly how to handle them. So that's kind of what the discussion today is if you're okay with how we handle it, and then we can worry about the permitted and the legalities behind it later. It's just like we have to allow them somewhere. So because of that, here's a first glance a possibility to help us handle it and regulate it and monitor it and control. I mean, if you take a look at one of the areas we left off, and I can't remember if we presented it to you, but the commission had a 20 signatures in Spanish Valley from the residents that were saying stop with the overnight rentals in our area. We're done with this. County, you need to put a prohibition on overnight rentals. Well, this in essence is to try to help regulate that, but yet not prohibit it in the zoning. So we allow for it, but then how do we allow for it? What's the premise behind it? Do we just let them creep in? Right now, that's what they've done is they've crept in, and those honest ones have taken, the proper route to get in. But yet, it's going forward as we change the zone. We're hoping that this will help with that regulation and allowance of them and where and how many, kind of going forward. And you kind of see this across the nation. This is not just a San Juan County uniqueness. Across the nation, they're struggling with this. And what we did is we took some of those areas that we felt that were like or similar in our nature with tourism centric areas and tried to come up with a regulatory system to handle our short-term rentals. Now, some of them, if we go off of this guideline, that are already in existence would then become non-conforming, and you would work to either change them in the future through the zoning that's applied there, or they continue that use as a non-conforming use. But yet, with the system here, we're hoping that we can get them to come forward and follow this process and be at least regulated and safe for the tourists that are staying in them.
Can you have different rules for different zoning classifications? Like short-term rentals in residential follow this set of rules. Short-term rentals in community commercial has another
Follow the set of rules. You could, absolutely. You can definitely do whatever. It's how do you enforce that?
I think a lot of the rules are going to pertain to both because again, our focus.
Go
is
through this just kind of high level, and as you skim down through it, she's like,
The only thing that's different is the density in residential.
So in here, kind of what we're
have to follow the same regulation.
what we're proposing is a permitting system. So if you want an overnight rental, you have to come in and apply for an overnight rental permit. And under that permit, there's guidelines that they have to continue to meet on an annual basis. And so, say for example, if I have an overnight rental and I don't live here, I've got to be able to show who to contact if there's an emergency. And I have to let the residents that are staying in there know on a placard on a wall in there who to contact in case of an emergency. If the sheriff comes out, it's after 10 o'clock. We have the nuisance piece tied in here. If it's after 10 o'clock and they're noisy and they're partying, they have to know who to contact. The sheriff needs to know who to contact, and it all follows that permit system, as we'll have all of that information so that if they're becoming a nuisance, we can call them up and within 2 hours have a response from that property manager or whoever it is on that contact list to correct the behavior. Now, if they don't correct that behavior, then it gets into, well, we're going to fine you. And if it still doesn't correct, well, then we're taking your permit away. And once you take that permit, they're done. And then you allow for another overnight rental somewhere else. On the formula, if you can kind of fast forward to the formula on here, we're trying to figure out, okay, so how many do we allow in a development or in an area? And so we're trying to work through in our minds of how many, what is that? So if you're on a block, a 10-acre block, or, 5 parcel subdivision, how many of that can be overnight rental? And so that's the formula that will kind of help steer this. It's like if we allow it in your Spanish Valley residential piece right now, just that thought, if we allow that, well, we're only going to allow so many overnight rentals to be in that area, in that subdivision. And so it's all kind of regulated off of that formula. So it'd be, if you're an existing overnight rental in this area and you come in and apply for a permit, then we're allowing that overnight rental to be placed right there and operate right there. If they become an abuser of the system and become a nuisance, we take that away, then that gives an opportunity for another owner in that area. Yes,
Yeah.
Oh
yep.
my gosh.
Exactly.
See, so if I had a property there, then I would hurry up and subdivide, and we just gained another short-term rental in our neighborhood.
Not if you can't follow that formula. If the formula doesn't allow it, so that's where she was talking about this doors. If you only allow every third home to be overnight rental or whatever that formula is, if you're not that one of that third, if you're the second home right next to an overnight rental, we would not allow you to have an overnight rental.
What if we all
Unless you're 3 doors down.
You know what I'm
right
saying?
now?
So it would be
Then you're
non-conforming.
Non-conforming.
And this so
Unless you hurry and first in and you apply
so
for the
this
permit
density
and you meet
limits,
that formula.
It's cleanest at a fresh development. right? Somebody wants to come in, put in a neighborhood. Can we do short term? Yep, you sure can't up to 10%.
Right.
I like doing just the percentage versus the doors.
Doors would be hard.
Doors, all of a sudden they go, well,
As like,
if I go to park
my
lot
fence
back,
has a
that
door
counts
on
as
it.
a door, and the front door
Totally.
counts as a door. And so I think the percentage is the cleanest route to go. Now in places like Mount Pill, everyone's coming in as non-conforming. We need to look at what we want it to be. It's going to take 10, 15, 20
Years and
time
years.
out to get back to residential, but we want that back to residential at some point. You know, it's a neighborhood. And so for places like that, people who have it going and they register with us within our time period, which we're considering July 1st to December 31st, mainly for the sake of business licenses. Because this permit is basically, I mean, the overnight accommodation certificate and their business license are going to be side by side on the wall. And that gives people a very, for both
Step by
us
step what
and
they've
for
gotta
people
follow.
staying there, it gives everybody an outline of exactly what's going on, who to call.
So if you're non-conforming, you're fine as long as you continue that use, and we'll make sure in here, if you stop that overnight rental use, say you don't come in and sign up for the permit 1 year and then next year you do, well, you lost that non-conforming right. And so now you have to transition back to a single family home, long-term rental instead of your short-time
Or they don't
overnight
apply
rental.
for their business license or whatever.
Or they sell their house.
Or they sell their house.
Now, you said
Doesn't go with the-
non-conforming does, as long as they continue, there is not a
Use.
break in use.
But
So-
the permit doesn't, the permit would have to work on the language on the permit because that wouldn't transfer with that individual or with the property.
The
Of the
new,
use.
well, it'd be like a bit, they'd have to reapply for a business license and but as long as they kept the use going, doesn't the non-conforming transfer?
We think that just with this kind of the permitting system, the reason I like that permitting system is, you know, fire code is one of them. You have to have the annual inspections and things like that. We place the onerous back on the owners themselves to monitor and make sure they have that so that when they come in to get the permit on an annual basis, they have to show that documentation that yes, my fire extinguishers have been inspected, or at one time I did have it fire code inspected to make sure my basement is, you know, I can egress out of my basement out the windows and things like that. So we think it'll be a little bit easier on the regulatory sense and the management of those is having that permit system instead of right now we've approved it, and that history and that knowledge of who we approved. I mean, as we looked at the map in here on the overnight overlay districts that we've approved, you know, that even that those there was some question, well, I thought we approved this property to be that and not this one. Through the permitting system, we'll have that history of them having that permit that's been approved, that's gone through the process, has those inspections that have taken place. It includes the sewer, you know, making sure that they're keeping it. What we tend to find, and I'm one that breaks this all the time with my family, is, you know, we'll rent an overnight rental for 4 rooms and cram it full of 20 people. Just all the kids. I mean, mind you, I have 10 kids, so I get 10 kids, all my grandkids together in an overnight rental, a 4-room. Well, that was never approved at that type of a use on the septic system. So now we've got to make sure that we're monitoring and that we're pumping the septic systems properly. And so this kind of helps us stay within the health code by making sure that they understand, and the property owners understand the occupancy limits on there, as well as those renters, whether or not they read it or not. It'll still be listed on a placard on their wall that they know that here's what it is, but then every annual renewal we'll be able to check and make sure that they're safe, and at least on the sewer side of it, the septics that they've been approved at.
And that max occupancy being disclosed really keeps us out of a lot of trouble on a lot of things.
And that will regulate, unless you changed it, but it'll regulate garbage collection.
Yeah, yep.
Regulates the number of parking stalls. If I I remember right, it even regulates the number of people per bedroom.
Mm-hmm.
It does.
So,
We show up in a
Toy hauler.
10-bedroom place with 8 trucks and trailers and side by sides,
Yes. Yep.
and we don't fit anywhere.
Absolutely. You fit all over the street. And in here, we kind of call that out because that was one of the things that some of the residents were mentioning is they're taking up all of the street area. It's not street parking. In the permitting system, they've got to call out where their parking is on there. And then in here, it starts to get into that nuisance if they're parking on the street and blocking the road, blocking access, emergency access, things like that. Then we can start to help regulate those as well through this permit system because like I mentioned, it elevates the fines and everything in here to where if we just can't get them to comply, if the Trent is renting them out all the time and bringing all of his razors, parking on the street, taking up the street after so many times of us telling you to stop, then we just yank your permit.
so Mac, if there's an existing subdivision, an
Yes,
existing
yep.
subdivision, and all 5 of us,
Yep.
have non-conforming uses, and we comprise more than 10% of the subdivision, can somebody go in and get a permit?
Not a new one.
Not a new one, so it's locked out.
You've got it. Yep.
We've got
As
it
long as you
locked out.
continue that use. Yep.
So, okay.
And then when you don't comply and you
And then we boot you out.
Then you get it back down to
Yep.
under 10%.
And then it's a lottery system.
Yeah, well, if we've got 50%,
Yeah, some of those areas have that. Yeah.
We're at 50%. There just aren't going to be any new permits
Correct.
until it goes down.
Until it
below
goes down to
10%.
where
But
it's supposed to be in that formula.
theoretically, each one of those lots could raise their house and subdivide it. What's the minimum now? that we
Quarter
can-
acre.
Quarter acre. So we could gain 4 lots. So that would change the lot number.
But
We
not
have
every
20
lot.
lots now,
Yeah. Yep.
and we can have 2 overnight rentals, but we still have 5. So,
Okay.
But you're
There's
only
still
allowed
an
2 by
inbox.
zoning.
So okay.
so unless
That-
somebody had like a lot of land that they were really getting after it, which would then go through the subdivision process and even maybe planned unit development, I don't think it's going to generate an organic issue.
So this actually does address the issue.
Hmm.
Shuts it down.
It shuts it down.
And
While
creates a
still
better
allowing for it.
While still
system.
allowing for it.
There's got to be an exception in here that we've got to figure out how to work is in those developments that we've approved the overnight overlay district. I mean, those are some pretty big overnight rental areas. And so we still have to figure out how to work through those because say like, for example, Balance Rock Resort and the one underneath it, Sheik's development, those are purely almost 100% overnight overlay districts. And so
That basically turns it into a hotel, and those are just casitas associated with some kind of management company or something like that. So, you designate it as a resort.
the resort.
Takes
You
it
can
out of
see-
the realm
you
of
can see
short
people
term.
that do, yeah.
Yep.
And then the short-term rentals are treated like warm beds in a hotel.
Well, and I think the other thing to keep in mind is just because they've applied, we don't have anybody that's finished chapters 10, the overnight overlay. So they applied for it. They're vested.
There's a
but
lot.
they haven't done the full shift. They haven't done step
What,
2.
Lloyd? Because it's a lot.
Well, there has been. I think we've only had maybe 1 or 2 that's completely finished it,
Correct. Yeah.
and that was Steve Howard and T whatever.
Curtis.
But I think all the rest have just
Curtis
done 1 or
Wells.
2 steps and they've walked away.
Mm.
And so
Um,
I'm not sure these big developments until they get that finished, and it is a lot.
They're not. Yeah, they're not even
But
there
no
yet.
one's moved. I haven't had anybody moving on it.
You're specifically talking about the development agreement.
That,
Yeah,
the-
they're
the
finalizing.
More or
section
less,
10 overnight
yeah.
accommodations overlay.
Because chapter 10's stupid, for one.
It is
It-
it's a PUD process.
No,
Crap.
it's
Oh, yeah,
it definitely is a
Yeah.
weeding out sort of thing, and a lot of developers have started it, and then they try to sell off the property to somebody else to finish it, because it is
Right.
a pain in the butt.
Mm-hmm. Well, you don't
Got
want to
wore
tell them
out.
your great colors. It
Your
asks
balcony
for your
sizes.
curtain colors. I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's everything. It's landscaping, sidewalks.
So in premise with this, how we would treat the overnight rentals, does that make sense? Is it? I think it's it's a way to get back on track with the overnight rentals, and it's in the end, you get to where you still preserve your residential areas, you still have a mix of overnight rentals that's allowed, but the hopes are that you transition back to affordable housing in general.
in the residential, yeah.
The town of Brighton uses the percentage, because there's so much pressure. They had to shut down people, and they're just taking time as time passes, see it start filtering out.
And try to get back to long-term options.
So, and another thing real quick, will you go back up to page 115, item 5?
Lloyd, there's nothing you ever do that's real quick.
No, keep going back.
Right here?
Item 5 right there. Yeah.
Oh, there you go about fire again. Go ahead.
So, okay, so if you read that, proof that smoke detectors, carbon monoxide detector extinguishers are installed and operable per adopted IRC International Residential Code. So the IRC, which is your residential code, and some jurisdictions consider nightly rentals as a commercial use.
We do as well.
So they don't fall under the IRC.
It's international.
The IBC.
Commercial.
Oh, all right. Thank you, Lloyd.
Exactly.
So,
So
IBC.
if we're doing IBC,
Yes.
now as the interpretation of our building department, now we are changing the whole world, because now we're doing fire suppression. Now we're doing, but and that's the interpretation of your building department, which is Ben.
Yeah.
And before that was Scott. So,
Great.
and I agree with them in the simple fact that, so Grand County's creating a water suppression designed by the plumber. And I'm like, now wait a second, where does that come from? But even on that, on number 5, there is nothing in the IRC that requires fire extinguishers. Yes, it does. It does require smoke detectors, carbon monoxide. But I mean, there's nothing in the IRC that would say that we need to have fire extinguishers.
It's got to be IBC because you're required to pay TRT, which is a business function.
Correct.
And then with that, you also have the business license requirement.
And we can still put
Right.
that in as part of the conditions. Part of your conditions is you have fire extinguishers around.
Right.
When you get the permit.
Well, and that, but that's what I'm saying. I don't want to follow it up with, as per code,
Yeah.
because
it's gotta be
code's
the
going
building.
to read different than what we're going to require. So I don't care what code says. We're going to require that you have fire extinguishers. But here's another thing: what pound of fire extinguisher? How many? I mean, we're requiring one per level? We're requiring, so we need to make sure that we're very specific on our definitions. If we're going to have somebody from our fire department, whether it be in Spanish Valley or in San Juan near Monticello, if they're going to go in and do their inspections, what are we inspecting? Okay, are we going to go in there with a can of smoke and make sure that all the smoke
Detectors
alarms
go off.
are
Mhm.
tied together?
Just like
as
you
per
do. Yeah.
the International Residential Code and the Commercial Code, and that are we testing carbon monoxide sensors, and so on and so forth. This goes on. We just need to make sure that we're very clear on what we are expecting as a county, not trying to throw it back on our international residential codes or our commercial codes for the simple fact that, you know, they may not require fire extinguishers, but we do. And
Yeah.
this is what we're
Yeah.
expecting. We want to make sure that you have a 5 or a 10-pound extinguisher on every level.
And to get the permit, you have to go through that inspection.
Right.
order
And
for
so
the permit
what
to be issued.
is what
Yeah, I don't.
so like and just to back up a little bit, when I did mine in Garfield, that's down in Tickaboo, they send us a list. So you apply for it, they send you a list. Okay, these are the things. You have to have this size fire extinguisher. You have to have egress, 2 points of egress from the house, plus including bedroom windows have to meet egress requirements, so on and so forth. It goes down the list. So you go, these people go to their house, they hit everything, they're checking boxes as they go
Yes.
for the inspection. And we just need to make sure that this is simple enough that we send them out a paper. These are the things that we're going to hit when we come. We're going to have, whether it be building department, planning, zoning administrator, or fire, or all three. These are the things we're going to hit on. And these are the things that you need to check the boxes on when we get there. And then it's going to happen again next year and next year.
I think this list is an outline, and
Mhm.
the actual inspection checklist would be the more appropriate place to
At the time of
specify
application.
what carbon monoxide detector and what fire extinguisher. This is just an overview. And that inspection list is going to be a cooperative effort between staff, basically the same
Right.
people who's doing the plat reviews.
Mhm.
You know,
Yep.
it will have input from health department, fire department,
So maybe
building.
we just need to add language to the sentence that says "and San Juan County checklist" or something. Is it-
Right.
I thought,
Yeah.
I thought that's what
It would be more
said
of the
this is
application.
Just a summary. The inspection list is going to be a line item where you literally sign that you looked at it.
I think it's already in there on the inspections. Once we finalize this with the attorneys, we'll
We'll
we'll push this out. But that's part of the application process that you have to have all that.
And
right
that,
up front.
That inspection will be associated with their business license. Like me and Nate are planning to go do these together at the same time. Go door to door and check them off. Run through that inspection form. The assessor's office is looking for personal
Property tax.
inventories,
Mhm.
because we haven't collected a lot of that. Every TV, bed, dining
Lloyd
set,
laughs.
all of that in a commercial use be taxed.
Lloyd, it's an election year.
Wow.
So,
Well,
so there's a lot to this,
there's so much I can say right now, Mac.
but we're over time, and I promised Melissa that I would feed her if we were here past 6. So,
Hey, so before you close, will you send us chapter 16
no,
just so we can kind of, please, just so we can kind
Not
of
yet.
go through it?
We hesitate.
and
We
make-
hesitate as long as we can
This
put draft
one,
on there.
The short term, I feel okay about sending you the rest of it, but the short term, we're still looking at heavily with our attorney team.
We've got to check it off with the attorney to make sure they're okay with
Okay,
it.
but we'll have plenty of time
Yes.
after
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
our
Yes.
$500 an hour
Yeah.
attorneys go through it.
So
We'll have plenty of time.
Yeah.
We need to do another work session. So where we go from here for you guys to help, the 2022 draft, which is on our website.
Yep.
That's already been reviewed quite a bit. A lot of you have already seen it. Get familiar with that because that's 80% of the new one.
Yep.
And let us finish up just a few of these chapters. We'll pitch the new one out in maybe a week or 2.
Yeah.
As soon as we can get it back from legal. Which puts us at, I'm hoping to do a work session on Monday, June 10th.
Then are you going to keep the public comment open longer then? Because if the
No.
I
Why
think-
would you do that? We
Well,
don't care
because
about them.
if
coming
you
in.
can't do the short-term
Really?
rentals.
They get in the way.
Melissa Melissa
No.
and I were just
Well,
talking about this.
tomorrow night,
So one,
you're gonna get a lot of
this-
questions about the short-term rental,
Right. So
and
first
you're not
of
gonna
all,
have anything to tell them.
Yeah.
They
What we will.
have this draft. It's been out for years. So, and we collect.
All that they don't
comments
have are
then.
the changes we discussed tonight in those chapters
So
that
we
we've
only
changed.
have those few chapters that are
So
different.
glamping, primitive, RV,
Um,
short-term rental.
s-
Just.
the other thing I was explaining to Melissa is there's a lot of stuff that we are superseded with state code on, and we don't necessarily need the general public going through this with a fine-tooth comb over stuff that we can't control. And
Like
so
your subdivision
we don't want
changes,
them
things
to
like
like
that.
waste their time of, oh, that should be 8 feet instead of 10 feet when building code says 10, sorry. And so it's not that it's not available to the public, but we don't need the public making these super tedious. We don't need them spending a ton of time over stuff we can't change.
Well, I don't know what time any resident would spend on any one particular thing, but they need to have it all to review
Correct, yeah.
at some
And
point. I mean,
it'll be up.
I'm pretty sure they're going to hit on the most,
When's
things
the
that
public
have
hearing?
to
So we already
happen
have the
then.
public
So
hearing
the-
advertised.
The public hearings are going to be on the 13th and the 18th.
So we have to have
associated
this
with each
out prior to the public hearing.
The short-term rental, at least,
Mhm.
ordinance.
Yep.
Okay. 'Cause
Yes.
I think we're going to get asked that tomorrow.
Yep.
You know,
I don't know
what
if
are we
they'll
going to do
get
about
that
short-term
far into
rentals
the
in Spanish
weeds.
Valley is going to be a question.
But
And I
I'm
don't
not
know
sure
what.
it's going to get as strategic as we got here tonight. Like, they need to know where is it permitted and where is it not. The end. Like,
Okay.
they don't need the outline of the application. The application process is pretty standard.
They'll get to weigh in on the language of the ordinance later.
Yes,
later
during the
on.
public hearings.
And so that's
So-
what we can tell them is there will be language coming later.
So
Yep.
what we want to focus on for the next 2 nights is the maps and the uses. And then those public hearings will really be focusing on the ordinance.
It's going to be interesting.
But so we need to have probably one more work session, the 10th.
10th works.
Can everybody do Monday the 10th? Do we want to shoot a little bit later so you don't have to take so much time off work? Should we do like 4 to 7 or 5 to 8 or
That'd work better for
yeah, I'm like 3 to 6
Throw
is
in a
asking
dinner
lot
there.
sometimes. Do we want to go 5 to 8?
4's fine. For
4
me
to
anyway,
7
yeah.
ish?
Yeah, I'll defer
4
to
to 1.
I'm not working that day, so.
4 to 1, however
4,
long
yep.
it takes us.
Perfect.
Why don't we, that one might be a long one. So why don't we, boss, we have money?
I don't know, there's not a lot
There's no money?
left. No,
Oh,
sorry.
that too.
There's not
There's
a lot left.
no, so we're getting down
We
to
already
those,
fed you once, you're done.
those changes in the ordinance.
20 years,
So-
I've been fed once.
Yeah.
Yep, I'm with you, Trent. That was the first time for me ever.
Yeah.
So
Well,
I-
Sitla feeds me weekly, but
So that one's going to be critical because that will be our last chance for changes before we vote
Push it to
on
the public.
this and push this through planning commission.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
that's exciting.
I don't know.
You know,
Or scary,
The
either
worst
one.
case scenario would be like we get this all set up and then we're like, oh, we're going to table it. And it's like, because then we would have to redo public hearings and blah blah. And we have ordered 8,700 postcards, and so it gets pricey real quick if we have to redo it some things. So I need you to have the mindset of like we've got to get this wrapped up by the 13th.
Well, then
Can
we
we
need
please-
this material.
Yeah, we
Yes,
need
yeah,
to
yes,
have
exactly.
it by, Friday at 11:59 the weekend before.
Yes,
so we
absolutely.
can really
I agree.
take
so
a
I know
look at
what
it.
you're doing on that
Yeah.
weekend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll call you, Trent. Trent, did
And
you
that
read?
everybody's hustling as fast as they can, including our attorneys.
And that's why we'd mentioned that is 80% of it is already there. 80% of you've already seen, well, most of you have seen the 80% there. All we would really be looking at for input is
That chapter 16.
the changes that are on there.
Chapter 16 and the recreational support zone. So yeah, you guys can already dive into most of it. It's already open.
So what's online, the 2022 draft,
Mm-hmm.
there aren't any changes to that we need to be aware of.
For the most part, correct.
Well,
There were minor changes with like
Definition
code
here and there.
updates and
A
definitions.
definition?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. But
But
nothing,
Substantive.
No big
substantive.
chunks.
Okay,
So the big chunks are 16 and the recreational support zone.
okay.
You'll see bigger on definitions. A lot of times people get stuck in the weeds if it's not clearly defined, and so some of the changes that the attorneys have seen on there is like, okay, we need this better defined from what we're seeing, and so
Yeah.
you'll have changes like that that are just structural on basis.
But as far
Or
as general
clarification.
use
Or
and
question.
content, it's pretty
And so
solid.
then, if we look at the 2022 ordinances now,
We will have a red line to you.
we
to
will
show
have
you
a
the
red line
changes.
through the changes. Okay.
Yep.
Okay,
Yeah.
good, thank you, that's helpful.
So of the 168 pages, I think it's 168, right?
It's getting there. I
So
don't know. By the
170
time I get rid
pages,
of all
yeah.
the little spacebar tabs that they did,
Yes.
that has been half the battle. Has been formatting.
No,
They did
it
not
was-
format it at
It
all,
was a conversion thing.
and so
So most of it, if you read that 2022, is there.
okay. So the 10th, June 10th, Monday, 4 p.m. I'll feed you, and we might have to hang in there for the long haul so that we're ready to go by that Thursday.
Accent, it's going to be a short meeting.
Oh, the heck, we might have to cook.
Well, if Lloyd's in the house,
I know it.
he should barbecue for us with your fire shirt on. All right.
You bet.
Okay, we're good to go. Please help get the word out. All the documents are online. And that's it.
Okay,
Gracias.
Okay,
thank
thanks,
you
guys.
so much.
See you,
Thank
Lloyd.
you guys.
Hey, Lloyd.
See